Chapter 120. Go to watch net. Chow Kefi's mind was now filled with thoughts of ways to spend time with this handsome and cute little boy in front of her. She really wanted to know what it would feel like to have sex with this boy who could make her cry just by caressing the top of her head. Although Li Yundong expressed defeat, this boy was still very cunning and refused to respond to her very provocative words directly. Go to watch net. Literature. When the food was served, Chow Kefi's heart skipped a beat. She called the waiter and ordered 2 bottles of Wuxia without asking if Li Yundong wanted them. Li Yundong stared blankly and said, 2 bottles of Wuxia? Your drinking capacity is too scary, isn't it? Chow Kefi glanced at Li Yundong and said, of course it's the 2 of us. Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, I can't drink. Chow Kefi crossed her hands on the table and rested her chin on the back of her hand. She leaned forward slightly and said with a smile, how can a man not drink? Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, then 1 bottle is enough. This is white wine. Chow Kefi said with a smile, it doesn't matter. We can talk about it if we can't finish it. Li Yundong was speechless and thought to himself, anyway, you are the one paying for it. Why should I save money for you? But how could he know that Chow Kefi was now thinking of getting him drunk and then pouncing on him? Soon 2 bottles of Wuxia were served, and they were high-quality Wuxia with 68% alcohol. Even a man would not be able to distinguish between good and bad after drinking 2 glasses. Chow Kefi opened a bottle of wine and poured a full cup in front of herself. It was a teacup of 4 taels. Li Yundong grimaced. I say, President Chow, are you drinking this like water? Can you do it? Chow Kefi laughed and said proudly, do you know that I used to be known as a wine fairy who could not be drunk even after 1,000 cups? Li Yundong and Chow Kefi gradually became familiar with each other, so he spoke more freely. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, sorry for not recognizing you. It turns out to be Jinren Chow. Go to watch net. 7KOM. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag fast. Update. Chow Kefi also raised her cup and said in a rough voice, I'll drink first as a sign of respect. Young hero, please feel free to do as you please. After saying that, he raised his head and gulped down the entire cup of liquor in one breath. Li Yundong was dumbfounded. F***ck me? Hey, slow down, don't have another heart attack. Chow Kefi drank a glass of hard liquor, and her face suddenly flushed. Her eyes seemed to be filled with spring water, and the skin on her neck and chest revealed a gorgeous blush. She giggled and said, don't you have a heart attack? As she spoke, she shot him a coquettish glance. Fortunately, Li Yundong hung out with Su Chan, a natural fox, all day long. Otherwise, he would have been seduced by Chow Kefi, a mature woman. He only felt his heart skip a beat, and his eyes unconsciously looked away. Chow Kefi saw that Li Yundong was a little unnatural and thought that he was shy. She smiled and said, I've already drunk. You should at least show some respect, right? Li Yundong had never drunk before and he didn't know if he could drink. He smiled bitterly and said, I can't drink. Chow Kefi was full of evil intentions and kept encouraging Li Yundong to drink. She said with a smile, it's okay. It's a little uncomfortable to drink with your eyes closed for the first time. After saying that, she giggled ambiguously. Li Yundong smiled bitterly in his heart. How could he meet such a person on his first day at work? Or the boss of the company? Why does she always say such irrelevant things? Li Yundong thought to himself, I'm already very sorry for leaving Su Chan alone at home. If I go back drunk, wouldn't I be too heartless? Li Yundong refused in every way possible, while Chow Kefi tried to persuade him to drink. While the 2 of them were entangled, they suddenly heard a voice coming from the side. Hey, isn't this President Chow? Li Yundong and Chow Kefi looked to the side together and saw a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes standing in front of them. Although he looked dignified, his eyes were always lingering on Chow Kefi's plump chest. Go to see. Net. Super underscore speed. More. No. As soon as Chow Kefi saw the man, a flash of disgust flashed in her eyes, but she quickly smiled and said enthusiastically, oh, it's President Zhao. What a coincidence. Are you also here for dinner? President Zhao pointed to a few men behind him who were also in suits and leather shoes and said, I came here with a few clients to discuss business. I didn't expect to meet you here. As he said this, President Zhao looked at Li Yundong. This is? Chow Kefi pointed to President Zhao and introduced him to Li Yundong. This is Zhao Yuzhen, the boss of Cathay Electronics Limited Company in the city. After that, she pointed to Li Yundong and introduced him to Zhao Yuzhen. This is Li Yundong, a college student who just came to work in Yin Mingfan's company today? When Zhao Yuzhen heard that Li Yundong was a college student, a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. He didn't shake hands with Li Yundong, but just nodded indifferently. Then, when he turned to look at Chao Kefi, his smile became very warm again. President Chao, it's such a coincidence today. Why don't we eat together? Chao Kefi cursed in her heart. Zhao Yun, you be asterisk starred, get away from me. You're delaying me from having sex here. She cursed in her heart, but she smiled and said, that's not very good. The dishes have already been served. Besides, President Zhao, it's not good for me to participate in your business with your clients, is it? When Zhao Yuzhen heard her refusal, a trace of unhappiness and resentment flashed in his eyes. He didn't want to force her. After shaking hands with Chao Kefi, he glanced greedily at the ravine on her chest and then turned to leave. Chao Kefi had been watching Zhao Yuzhen leave with a smile on her face. After they entered the box and disappeared, she sat down, took out a wet tissue from her carry-on bag with a gloomy face, and wiped her hands hard. Li Yundong could see that Chao Kefi was in a bad mood, so he didn't ask any more questions. He just picked up the dishes on the table with his chopsticks and ate alone. After wiping for a while, Chao Kefi suddenly had no intention of seducing Li Yundong. She sighed with waning interest and said in a weathered tone, Xiao Li, I'll call you brother for the sake of my seniority. You see me driving such a good car, wearing gold and silver jewelry, and being the boss of the company. It seems that I'm very glorious, but who knows the bitterness in it? You're like Mr. Zhao. Although he's not my boss, I still have to be polite and smile at him. Because people in our line of work lack money the most. And what they don't lack the least is money. Chao Kefi smiled bitterly. They can be said to be potential investors, so no matter how disgusting they are, I have to bear it. I have anger and grievances in my heart. Who can I find to vent my anger? Alas, your sister, I've been living a hard life for so many years. Chao Kefi sighed with red eyes. Li Yundong didn't answer and listened quietly. Chao Kefi poured herself another glass of wine and drank it by herself. She said with a wry smile, when I first entered the industry, I didn't drink a drop of wine. But now drinking makes me sick and I can't quit. The most terrible thing is that even if I want to quit, I can't. Because in this industry, if you don't drink, how can you survive? Those men just want to get you drunk so they can take advantage of you. Chao Kefi drank another glass of wine alone. After drinking 8 taels of wine, Chao Kefi was already a little drunk. She had accumulated a lot of complaints and pain in her daily life and had nowhere to vent them. Today she suddenly met Li Yundong, a boy who was different from the others and made her feel extremely good. Suddenly her closed heart was opened and she talked endlessly. It was the easiest to get drunk while complaining. After drinking another glass of wine, Chao Kefi was already a little drunk. She looked at Li Yundong with blurred eyes, smiled and said, You men are all the same. When you see a beautiful woman, you seem to have lost your soul and try to get into her clothes. Are you the same? Li Yundong had been listening to Chao Kefi talk about her entrepreneurial past, and he couldn't help but have some respect for this strong woman who had gone through hardships to create a company. He reached out and grabbed the glass from Chao Kefi's hand, saying, Mr. Chao, you're drunk? Chao Kefi grabbed the glass from Li Yundong's hand with a smile. Nonsense. Look at me. How could I be drunk? Hey, give me back the glass. I'm going to be angry. Li Yundong smiled and hid the glass behind him. No, I can't drink anymore. Chao Kefi said angrily, Why are you like other men? So overbearing? I'm not drunk. You don't believe me? Smell it if you don't believe me. As she said this, she sat down next to Li Yundong's seat and threw herself into his arms like a burning fire. Li Yundong was startled and reached out to push Chao Kefi away. But when he reached out and pushed, he just pushed the fat and plump part of Chao Kefi's chest. As soon as his warm and strong hand touched Chao Kefi's skin, the mature woman seemed to turn into a mass of spring water and almost melted in Li Yundong's arms. Chao Kefi grabbed Li Yundong's hand to prevent it from escaping her chest. She didn't care that they were in the dining room. She giggled and looked as if she had caught him in the act. See, you've finally shown your true colors, haven't you? You pretend to be serious on the surface, but in fact you are just like other stinky men. You only think about those bad things. No matter how calm Li Yundong was, he couldn't help but panic. He explained, I didn't mean it. Chao Kefi smiled drunkenly and said, Don't explain. Although you are as lecherous as those stinky men, I don't like those stinky men. I like you. If you want to do bad things, I'll let you do it, okay? After saying that, she actually leaned her soft chest toward Li Yundong's hand. Happy reading. Chapter 121. Go to watch net. Li Yundong quickly retracted his hand. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sister, this is a restaurant. With so many people watching, do you want to put on a live erotic show? Seeing Li Yundong retreat, Chow Kefi giggled. Just as she was about to reach for a yard after taking an inch, she suddenly heard a cold snort next to her, and a jealous voice rang out. Oh, so intimate? It seems that I came at the wrong time. Chow Kefi turned her head with hazy eyes and giggled. Zhao, President Zhao, what are you doing here? Zhao Yuzhen had come to propose a toast to Chow Kefi, but as soon as he came out, he saw this scene. He was shocked and jealous. He knew that although Chow Kefi looked romantic and charming, like a sexy goddess, she was actually very pure and self-disciplined. Many people wanted to take advantage of her, but they failed. He had long admired Chow Kefi's beauty and had pursued her in private for a long time, but Chow Kefi had always kept a distance from him, which made him very angry. Go to watch net. 7 The sexy goddess he had pursued for a long time had been taken advantage of by a stupid Tsing University student. It was really unbearable. Although Zhao Yuzhen was talking to Chow Kefi, his eyes were squinting at Li Yundong, full of contempt and disdain. His eyes seemed to be saying, Boy, who do you think you are? You haven't been weaned yet, have you? Go back to your mother's womb and drink a few more years of milk before coming out again. Li Yundong was secretly displeased by Zhao Yuzhen's gaze. Although Chow Kefi was a little drunk, she knew very well in her heart. She said with a smile, Oh, President Zhao has proposed a toast to me. How can I not drink it? As she spoke, she poured herself a glass and said with a smile, I'll drink first. Then she raised her head and gulped down the wine. As soon as Chow Kefi raised her neck, a large area of pink was exposed on her chest. Zhao Yuzhen's eyes were fixed on her, and he wished his eyeballs could stick to her chest. Li Yundong, who was standing to one side, couldn't stand it anymore. He coughed dryly. Only then did Zhao Yuzhen wake up. He glared at Li Yundong unhappily and then drank up the liquor in his hand. After saying some sour and polite words, he left Li Yundong's table and went into his own private room. Chow Kefi didn't sit down until he entered the private room. She burped and covered her mouth in pain. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Seeing that she was in pain, Li Yundong reached out his hand and helped her massage her back. How can you drink like this without harming your body? Did you see how much wine he had in his glass? But you drank a full cup. How could you not be at a disadvantage? Chow Kefi had been complaining to Li Yundong while drinking. She hadn't eaten much. No one could stand a few glasses of wine, let alone she was in poor health. Chow Kefi's eyes were filled with tears and her voice was a little hoarse. She forced a smile and waved her hand. It's okay. I'll be fine in a while. I'm used to it. Watch net. Li Yundong's heart softened. He reached out his hand and massaged the meridians and acupoints on Chow Kefi's back. For a moment, Chow Kefi felt warmth on her back, and her whole body felt lazy as if she was soaking in warm water. Every pore on her body was so comfortable that she wanted to moan. It's so comfortable. Chow Kefi groaned. She glanced at Li Yundong with her charming eyes and said, Good brother, is this how you saved me? Li Yundong smiled and was about to speak when he suddenly heard Zhao Yuzhen's voice from the side. Hey, if you want to be intimate so much, go somewhere else. This is a place for eating. Chow Kefi straightened up and forced a smile. Mr. Zhao, what's the matter? Zhao Yuzhen pointed to a middle-aged man standing next to him and said, This is Mr. Xia of Jiahe Wood Company. I've heard a lot about you. I want to have a drink with you. Chow Kefi's face was a little pale. She knew that if she continued drinking, she would definitely be drunk today. She forced a smile and said, Mr. Zhao, I really can't drink today. Before she could finish speaking, Zhao Yuzhen said in a strange tone, Mr. Chow, are you serious? You can't even drink a little? You can drink a lot. As he spoke, he glanced at Li Yundong and said in a strange tone, You'd rather drink with him than with us, wouldn't you? Chow Kefi was angry, but there was nothing she could do. She gritted her teeth, poured a full glass and said, Well, Mr. Xia, this is a toast to you. Mr. Xia was a bald middle-aged man with a very wretched expression. He looked at Chow Kefi lecherously and when he grinned, he looked like a hippopotamus. Chow Kefi picked up the glass and was about to raise her head to drink when she saw an arm stretch out from the side and stop her. It was Li Yundong. Li Yundong saw that Zhao Yuzhen had tried to force Chow Kefi to drink again and again. It was fine if he was alone, but he had even brought a helper. He was angry in his heart and said with a sneer, I'll drink for Mr. Chow. Zhao Yuzhen looked at Li Yundong in surprise and laughed. You. Who do you think you are? Chow Kefi's face was a little ugly. She said to Li Yundong, "It's okay. I'll do it myself." However, Li Yundong pushed her behind him with his hand and stared at the two men in front of him with a cold expression. The corners of his mouth were full of a sneer. He turned his head and said to Chow Kefi, "Mr. Chow, step back. I'll do it." Li Yundong's voice was indescribably decisive, just like the words of a person who had been giving orders for a long time, making people unconsciously do what he said. "Go to see." Chow Kefi was stunned for a moment. She unconsciously sat down and looked at the back of the young boy in front of her with blurred eyes. He was not very tall, but his shoulders were broad, giving people a sense of responsibility and masculinity. His back was broad and muscular, and even through his clothes, the muscles could be seen rising and falling with his movements, full of a sense of reassuring strength. His back was straight as if there was a sharp sword hidden in it. Even without touching its sharpness, one could feel its arrogance. Seeing that Li Yundong had taken the initiative to come out to drink, Zhao Yuzhen sneered and said, "Do you think you deserve to drink with us?" Li Yundong had always had a strong sense of justice and a chivalrous spirit in his heart. He couldn't bear to see others bully the weak. In addition, he was at the age where he was not afraid of anything, and he had also succeeded in chi refining. How could he be afraid of these middle-aged men in front of him? Li Yundong didn't hide his disgust and contempt in his eyes. He raised his chin and said provocatively, "What? You don't dare?" Li Yundong was young and handsome, with an outstanding temperament and heroic spirit. The pressure he brought to ordinary people was not comparable to that of a man like Zhao Yuzhen, who spent all his time under the bed and the wine table. As soon as Zhao Yuzhen heard Li Yundong's words, his face turned red. He said angrily, "I don't dare? I'm afraid that you will drink under the table and become a tortoise." Li Yundong had always been arrogant, but he was even more arrogant than others. He raised his eyebrows and pointed to his crotch with a sneer. "Well, if you can't drink, you can crawl here." This sentence was so shocking that it immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the restaurant. What is this? This is the humiliation of his crotch. For a man, is there any humiliation worse than the humiliation of his crotch? For a moment, Zhao Yuzhen was in a dilemma in front of everyone's eyes. His face alternated between blue and white. President Xie, who was beside him, also tried to persuade him, "Oh, you don't have to do this to drink." Zhao Yuzhen was really a little afraid that if he couldn't win against Li Yundong, he would really make a fool of himself. Hearing President Xie's words, he also wanted to take the opportunity to roll down the slope and get off the stage. However, Li Yundong had always been an unforgiving person. He was annoyed that the bald Mr. Xie was staring at Chow Kefi, so he pointed at Mr. Xie and started a war. "You can come at me too," he said. "If I can't drink, I'll crawl. You can't drink." As he said this, he pointed to his crotch again. "Crawl here." What a bully. Chow Kefi pulled the corner of Li Yundong's clothes worriedly. "Hey, you don't have to do this, do you?" Li Yundong said without looking back. "Shut up and stay aside." Although his words were rude and overbearing, Chow Kefi obediently shut her mouth. Instead, there was a strange emotion rippling in her heart. Zhao Yuzhen and President Xie suddenly took a deep breath, and both of them looked angry. At this time, their companions in the private room heard the noise and came out. Seeing them coming over, Li Yundong thought that they had come to help, so he sneered and said, "More helpers? Well, let's do it together. The same rule. There are 5 of you. 5 of you can drink one of me. Are you afraid?" This sentence ignited the powder keg. President Zhao and the others were all angry. As the saying goes, alcohol makes a coward brave. They had all drunk a little, and they thought to themselves, 5 of us can't drink one of you? Then we can all go to hell. Zhao Yuzhen immediately slapped the table and said angrily, "Well, King bastard, you said it yourself. Don't regret it later." Li Yundong saw that his mouth was dirty, so he retorted rudely, "Who are you scolding, little bastard?" Zhao Yuzhen said angrily, "Little bastard scolded you." Li Yundong laughed and said, Yes, little bastard scolded me." This was a classic dialogue in The Return of the Condor Heroes. All the people in the hotel burst out laughing. Zhao Yuzhen was so angry that he pointed at Li Yundong, trembling all over. Well, you have guts, you have guts." Since Li Yundong had succeeded in chi refining, although his character had gradually become calm, he was still impulsive and irritable when he encountered something. Moreover, once he lost his temper, he would ignore everything and not consider the consequences at all. He sneered and said, "Of course I have guts. I'm bullying you men alone. If that's not guts, then what is it? I'm not like you men bullying a woman. Of course I don't have guts." After he said this, the women next to him cheered. Chow Kefi also looked at Li Yundong with shining eyes, and the look in her eyes became more and more infatuated. Zhao Yuzhen was so angry that he almost fainted. He turned around and shouted, "Waiter, serve the wine." Although the waiter looked embarrassed, he was very happy in his heart. Fight to the death and drink a few more bottles of wine. This is all performance. After a while, 6 bottles of Wuliangye, which were more than 60 degrees, were placed on the table. Li Yundong took 1 bottle and said loudly, "I'll drink 1 bottle and the 5 of you will drink 1. How about that? Is it fair?" When the people next to him heard this, they were secretly worried about Li Yundong. How could he possibly outdrink them? Zhao Yuzhen grinned grimly and said, "If you really want to die, then don't blame us." As he said this, they poured the wine 1 glass for each person. Then they raised their glasses and drank it all in 1 gulp. Then they looked at Li Yundong arrogantly and said, "It's your turn." Those who could drink 4 taels of white wine in 1 breath were all strong people. As soon as these people raised their necks, everyone in the hotel who knew how to drink knew that these people had a high capacity for liquor and were not to be trifled with. The young man was most likely going to lose. However, Li Yundong still looked at them with a sneer. When he opened the bottle cap, he didn't forget to sneer at them. "What's the point of drinking with a cup?" As he said this, he used his palm as a knife and cut the neck of the bottle with a swish. He cut the mouth of the bottle with his bare hand, and the cross-section was as smooth as a knife. Everyone in the hotel was stunned by this move, and then there was a burst of exclamation. "Damn, he's a strong man." Li Yundong raised his head and opened his mouth. The liquor of 60 degrees fell into Li Yundong's mouth like a silver ribbon in the air. Li Yundong's Adam's apple rolled up and down, but everyone saw that although Li Yundong was drinking so much, not a drop of wine was spilled. For a moment, no one in the hotel was in the mood to eat. They all watched the young man drink the bottle as if it were water. In just a short while, the bottle of white wine had been drunk by Li Yundong. He lowered his head, wiped his mouth and put the bottle aside with a clang. He shouted with an amazing momentum, "Again?" When drinking, momentum was the most important thing. Before, Zhao Yuzhen and the others had drunk all the white wine in the glass in 1 gulp, which had already been very heroic. However, Li Yundong drank the whole bottle in 1 breath, as if he was drinking nectar. He was hearty, but he didn't look drunk at all. What a terrifying capacity for liquor. Chow Kefi was stunned and was speechless in her heart. "Oh my God, I actually wanted to get him drunk? This is a wine immortal." In the face of Li Yundong's provocation, it was impossible for Zhao Yuzhen and the others to retreat at this time. They looked at each other and cheered each other on. "What are you afraid of? 5 men can't drink as much as a little kid." Zhao Yuzhen was emboldened. He also shouted, "Waiter, 6 more bottles?" Li Yundong threw his head back and laughed. His face was ruddy as if he was drunk and talking nonsense. 6 bottles is nothing, he said. 6 bottles is nothing. Waiter, bring all the wine here." "What?" The crowd suddenly burst into an uproar. Is this guy crazy or stupid? Does he really think he is a wine immortal? Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 122. Please remember the domain name of this website. Or search on Baidu Frowny Face Sanlian Literature website. When the waiter heard Li Yundong's words, he was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. He subconsciously looked at the lobby manager, who scolded him, "Idiot, go and carry it out. What are you waiting for?" After a while, the waiters moved boxes of liquor out. Soon they piled up into a hill, stunning the diners who were watching, let alone Zhao Yuzhen and the others. After Li Yundong drank a bottle of liquor, he felt that the moment it entered his throat, he almost vomited, but he forcibly held back the pungent smell of alcohol. After that, a burning feeling spread down his throat. After a while, the qi in Li Yundong's body began to boil and roll on its own without him even needing to circulate it himself, surging around the meridians in his body. Li Yundong could even feel that his liver qi had become extremely strong, attracting all the blood in his body to his liver, quickly detoxifying the poison of alcohol. Since ancient times, all martial artists were fond of drinking. The reason for this was because they had practiced martial arts for a long time. Their 5 viscera and 6 bowels had been tempered to become extremely strong. Whether a person could drink or not depended on his courage and the strength of his liver. If one was brave enough, he would be heroic enough. The key to drinking was to fight. If a person's liver qi was strong enough, he would be able to drink. The better a person's liver was, the faster and stronger he would be in detoxifying alcohol. Li Yundong not only had a reconstructed body of Jindan, but his internal organs had also been extremely strong through the cultivation of 5 qis collecting in mind. His liver's ability to detoxify was incredible. Although he didn't know how much he could drink, his body told his brain, I can drink and I can drink a lot. He opened the bottles of white wine one by one. He still put one bottle in front of Zhao Yuzhen and the other in front of him. No matter how Zhao Yuzhen drank, he still cut the mouth of the bottle with his hand and poured the white wine down his throat like a white rope. He drank happily and boldly. If the people around him hadn't smelled the wine, they would have thought that he was drinking plain water. In the blink of an eye, Li Yundong finished another bottle. Not only was he not drunk at all, but his eyes became brighter and brighter, and he was in good spirits. The pores all over his body were open, desperately trying to expel the alcohol from his body. Zhao Yuzhen and the others gritted their teeth, and the 5 of them also drank the bottle of white wine. At this time they had almost drunk half a kilo of white wine. Moreover, they drank in a hurry, so all of them were red in the face. Li Yundong didn't even wait for them to catch their breath. He cut a bottle, tilted his head back and poured the wine. He drank 8 bottles of white wine in one go. At this moment, everyone in the hotel was so shocked that their scalps went numb and their hair stood on end. Is this still a human? This is the reincarnation of the wine immortal. How can a human drink so much? This wine must be fake. An incredulous diner leaned forward and sniffed Li Yundong's bottle. Suddenly, he was so choked by the strong smell of wine in the bottle that he quickly pinched his nose. Then he looked at Li Yundong in horror and shock. This guy can drink 8 bottles of white wine with more than 60% alcohol in one go. My God. For a moment, everyone in the hotel looked at Li Yundong as if they were looking at a god. Some people even secretly speculated, is this boy a martial arts master who can expel the wine from his little finger like Duanyu? More than 1 or 2 people thought of this idea. Some people couldn't help looking at Li Yundong's fingers and toes, trying to see if there was any water flowing out of his fingers. But in fact, as soon as the wine entered his stomach, the alcohol was immediately eliminated by Li Yundong's strong liver. Then the liquid quickly turned into white gas in his body and was discharged from his pores. It was equivalent to the wine going through Li Yundong's 5 viscera and blood vessels and then directly being discharged from his body. It didn't flow to his bladder and other organs at all, let alone his fingers and toes. Li Yundong drank 8 bottles of wine in one breath. Not only was he still not drunk, but his eyes were bright. He laughed, pointed to Zhao Yuzhen and the others and said, "It's your turn." The wine table was like a battlefield. Often the stronger one side's momentum was, the weaker the other side's momentum was. The more Li Yundong drank, the more heroic he became, but the more Zhao Yuzhen and the others drank, the more frightened they became. Zhao Yuzhen and the others looked at each other, gritted their teeth, opened the bottles in front of them, and drank one glass after another. Although they could drink well, they were not young after all, and they were all people who had been hollowed out by wine and women. Even ordinary young people could not compare with them, let alone a strong man like Li Yundong. After only drinking the 6th bottle, Zhao Yuzhen covered his mouth and vomited. The wine came out of his nostrils and he knelt on the ground in pain. As soon as he vomited, the others couldn't hold it anymore. They all covered their mouths and ran to the bathroom. For a moment, the smell of alcohol filled the restaurant. Li Yundong drank a total of 10 bottles of white wine, but he didn't move. His face didn't change and his heart didn't beat. However, his eyes were so bright that no one dared to look at them directly. He looked down at Zhao Yuzhen, who was lying on the ground, and sneered, "How does it feel to be bullied?" Zhao Yuzhen was so angry that his whole body was trembling. When he thought of the bet he had made with this little boy before, he wanted to kill himself here immediately. 5 people couldn't even beat 1 person in drinking. Oh my God, am I really going to crawl into his crotch? How can I be a man in the future? Zhao Yuzhen screamed in despair in his heart. Some people next to him pointed at Li Yundong and whispered, "Is he still a human? He drank so much but he doesn't look drunk at all." Of course he's not a human. He's a wine immortal, a god of wine. He's so awesome. He's so manly. He's a real man. Although Zhao Yuzhen was so drunk that his cerebellum was numb and his body couldn't react, his mind was still clear. As soon as he heard the word drunk, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He staggered to his feet and looked like he was going to die a hero. He grabbed the bottle of wine and poured it all over his body like water. More of it spilled out than he drank, as if he was taking a bath. After a while, Zhao Yuzhen staggered and fell down as if he was drunk. Although Chao Kefi hated Zhao Yuzhen in her heart, she couldn't help but admire this wily old fox's quick wits. If you're drunk, you can avoid the humiliation of being groped. Smart. However, a dignified boss had been tricked like this by a little boy. It was really embarrassing. Li Yundong really knew how to play tricks on people. Zhao Yuzhen was smart and his other companions were not stupid either. They all hid in the toilet and didn't dare to come out. After waiting for a while, Li Yundong kicked Zhao Yuzhen, who was lying on the ground and snoring in full view of the crowd. Hey, stop pretending. Get up and drink. Aren't you very arrogant? Zhao Yuzhen asked. His words made the people next to him look very strange. They looked at Li Yundong and muttered to themselves, "It seems that you are the most arrogant person now, aren't you?" Chow Kefi also tried to persuade him. Forget it. Let's go back. She reached out to the waiter and pointed to the expenses here. How much is it? I'll pay the bill. Seeing that there was no more fun to watch at this time, the onlookers in the restaurant sat back in their seats one after another. Only a few people who were eager to see the world in chaos shouted, "The wine hasn't been finished yet." Li Yundong squinted at them and sneered, "Come over and drink with us." The people who had been making a scene quickly shrank back, as fast as a turtle hiding its head. The people in the restaurant suddenly burst into laughter. Chow Kefi paid the bill, pulled him out of the restaurant with a smile, and said angrily, "Well, we've offended President Zhao and the others." Li Yundong sneered and said, "What can you do if you don't offend them? On the contrary, they will push their luck and won't stop until they get what they want." Although Chow Kefi was a little drunk, she felt much better after Li Yundong helped her calm down. However, her skin still showed a charming rose flush, and her eyes were watery and full of affection. She smiled and said, Okay, I know you're good, okay? By the way, you have to protect me. Otherwise, if they bully me again, I won't be able to resist them as a weak woman." Chow Kefi had always shown herself as a strong woman, but in front of this boy who she had known for less than a day, she opened up her heart and put herself in the perspective of a weak person. She unconsciously wanted to rely on this boy. Hearing Chow Kefi's pitiful words, Li Yundong waved his hand and smiled. "I'll help you if I can." Chow Kefi cheered like a little girl. She took out the key from her bag and shook it with a smile. "Let's go. I'll take you back." Li Yundong looked at her drunken appearance and couldn't help saying, "Hey, are you okay? How can you drive when you're so drunk? Nowadays, drunk driving is very strictly regulated. What if you get caught?" Chow Kefi smiled and said, "Won't it be fine if you don't get caught?" Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "That works?" Chow Kefi glared at him and said, "You were so manly just now. Why are you so sentimental now?" Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, "I'm responsible for my life." As he spoke, he suddenly saw a taxi coming. Li Yundong quickly reached out to stop it, opened the door, and pushed Chow Kefi to the back seat without saying anything. He sat in the front seat, then turned his head and said to Chow Kefi, "Where do you live? I'll take you home first." Chow Kefi giggled and said, "No, I have to take you home. You can't know where I live." Li Yundong looked helpless. "How can you go home when you're so drunk?" Lying in the back seat, Chow Kefi shouted like a drunkard, "If you don't let me take you home, I won't tell you. Let's see what you can do." Li Yundong was a little crazy and threatened, "Hey, are you really not going to tell me?" Chow Kefi shrank into a ball and looked at Li Yundong pitifully. "Are you going to bully me?" Li Yundong felt a headache coming on. He had to turn around and tell his sister, who was giggling beside him, his address. After the car started, Chow Kefi sat up and leaned against the front seat. She put her mouth next to Li Yundong's ear and said angrily, "Why are you so domineering?" Li Yundong knew that Chow Kefi was really drunk, so he said, "Well, I'm domineering." Seeing that Li Yundong had given in, Chow Kefi giggled again and said, "It's good to know that you're domineering. You bully a weak woman like me. Hey, remember to go to work tomorrow or I'll deduct your salary." Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I don't work for your company. How can you deduct my salary?" Chow Kefi smiled proudly and said, "Yin Mingfan has already lent you to me for a whole month. If you don't want to have your salary deducted, be obedient." Li Yundong was tongue-tied. "Ah, how can that be? Then I'll come to you when I get my salary?" Chow Kefi's eyes were like silk and she laughed in Li Yundong's ear and said, "Yes, you know fear now, don't you?" Li Yundong chuckled and said, "Then can I ask how high the salary is?" Chow Kefi giggled and said, "I won't tell you." Li Yundong looked resentful. "Humph, if you don't want to tell me, then don't tell me. I stood up for you for nothing today. You're so heartless." Chow Kefi giggled as if she were a child who had stolen someone else's toy. Her sister, who had been driving, glanced at Li Yundong out of the corner of her eye and muttered in her heart, Could it be that I've met the legendary handsome guy who is being supported by a rich woman today? After driving for about 20 minutes, Li Yundong arrived at the place where he lived. He got out of the car and told his sister, "You have to send her home and watch her enter the door before you leave, okay?" As he said this, he took out a red note and handed it over. "This is all yours. Please take good care of her, okay?" His sister thought to herself, "Anyway, you are being supported by a rich man. Why should I be polite to you?" Thus he simply agreed. Chow Kefi sat by the window of the back seat and looked at Li Yundong softly. The ancients said that looking at a beautiful woman under the moonlight would double her beauty, but looking at a handsome man under the moonlight would also add a bit of mystery to it. The more Chow Kefi looked at him, the more she liked him. There was simply no part of him that she didn't like. She suddenly crooked her finger at Li Yundong and said with a smile, "Don't you want to know how much the salary is?" Li Yundong leaned over curiously and asked, "How much?" Chow Kefi crooked her finger again and said mysteriously, "Come closer." Li Yundong moved a little closer and looked at Chow Kefi with bright eyes. He saw that this woman was overflowing with charm, like a raging fire that would burn people into powder as soon as they got close. Chow Kefi saw that Li Yundong was still reluctant to get close to her as if he was facing a formidable enemy. She couldn't help but say angrily, "Hey, you really don't want to know? Come closer. Yes, turn your face to me and I'll whisper it to you." Li Yundong tilted his face and moved closer. As soon as he did, his cheek was suddenly touched by something warm and moist. Then Chow Kefi laughed proudly and slapped the driver's seat hard, shouting, "Hurry up and drive." His sister shook her head and stepped on the accelerator. The car roared away, leaving Li Yundong standing there in a daze, holding his cheek with one hand, staring blankly into the distance. Li Yundong wiped the place where Chow Kefi had kissed him with his finger and couldn't help but think, "Oh no, is this considered cheating? No, I like Su-chan, she's my girl. If this girl finds out, won't I die miserably?" Li Yundong rubbed his head frantically, his heart in a knot. Damn it, how can this happen when I'm making money at work? If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have saved her. This woman is a vixen. Li Yundong raised his head and looked at his home, his face full of grief and indignation. There's an innocent little vixen in my house, and a coquettish and mature big vixen in my workplace. How can this be? Do you really think I'm a saint? To quickly find this site, please search on Baidu Sanlian Literature website. Chapter 123. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong was sneakily kissed by Chow Kefi. Although it was not voluntary, that moment of skin contact made his heart skip a beat. This made Li Yundong feel very guilty. As he walked home, he kept muttering to himself, "This is just work. This is just work. I like my girl. I like my girl. Oh, look at the time." Li Yundong walked into the elevator, patted his head and smiled bitterly. "I left her alone for so long. She must be starving." Li Yundong felt more and more guilty. He sniffed himself again to see if there was any smell of alcohol, but how could he smell it? He sniffed a few times and found nothing unusual, so he thought to himself, well, there is no smell of alcohol, she should not be able to smell it. When he arrived at the door, Li Yundong first listened for a while, but there was no sound inside. Li Yundong couldn't help but mutter, "She can't be asleep, can she? What time is it?" He opened the door with the key and laughed suddenly. "Girl, your master is back." But it was dark inside the house. There was no light at all. It was very quiet. Li Yundong was stunned. He knew that the girl was the kind of person who couldn't stay idle. She had to find something to do even if she stayed in one place. Her hands were busy and her mouth was busy. Is she hiding somewhere to scare me? Or is she already asleep? Li Yundong couldn't help thinking. He closed the door quietly, then tiptoed through the living room and the dining room. When he came to the girl's room, he pushed the door open and shouted, "Found you." But the bedroom was also pitch black, so quiet that it made one's hair stand on end. Li Yundong was more and more surprised. He knew that the girl never played hide-and-seek with him. Did she go out? No way. Li Yundong was a little anxious. He didn't have time to play around. He quickly walked to his room and opened the door. Sure enough, the room was empty. It was dark. Li Yundong was a little scared. He opened all the doors in the house, but the girl was not at home. The house was empty as if Su-chan had never been there. Li Yundong suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of panic and fear. Where's Su-chan? Su-chan was Li Yundong's Achilles heel. Whenever Su-chan was involved, Li Yundong would lose control of his emotions. Watch net. 7 KOM. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning percent super hashtag speed. Update. Li Yundong searched every corner of the house like a madman, but no matter where he looked, he couldn't find Su Chan. Is she angry at me and ran away from home? Li Yundong's heart was pounding and cold, but he quickly shook his head. Impossible, impossible. The little girl is not the kind of person who would be at odds with me. Li Yundong felt that although Su Chan had only been by his side for about a month, the two of them seemed to have been together for more than a year, or even 10 years. They even understood each other better than many white-haired couples. Could it be that she went out to find me? Li Yundong's mind was in a mess. He paced around the room like a headless fly. It's possible. She probably went out to find me after I didn't come back so late. The more Li Yundong thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. He rushed to the door ready to go out and find Su Chan. But as soon as he reached the door he stopped. He suddenly thought of a problem. How would Su Chan know where I am? Where am I supposed to find her? Li Yundong froze in place. He suddenly remembered that Su Chan had a phone. He rushed to his room, found his phone, turned it on, and quickly dialed Su Chan's number. But as soon as the call went through, Su Chan's phone rang from inside the room. Li Yundong turned his head and saw that Su Chan's phone had fallen into the corner of the sofa. The backseat cover of the phone had been flipped open. Li Yundong's heart sank. Did something happen to her? Li Yundong thought. Did something happen to her? Li Yundong thought. The more Li Yundong thought about it, the more scared he became. His face turned pale and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. He paced around in the middle of the living room anxiously, almost going crazy. Su Chan. Where are you? He roared. His voice rang out and was sent far away from the top of the building. But after a while, a weak voice came from a corner of the living room. I'm here. Li Yundong was stunned at first and then he turned around with ecstasy. As soon as he turned around, he heard a sneer behind him. Evil, it's really you? Let's see where you can hide. Li Yundong saw a surge of air in front of him, and Su Chan suddenly appeared in front of him, shouting in panic, "Be careful." After saying that he pushed Li Yundong away. Watch net. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning percent super hashtag speed. Update. Li Yundong saw a flash of red light in front of him and Su Chan flew out. With a crash, she hit the glass table in the dining room and immediately broke it. Su Chan also groaned in pain and fell into a pile of glass shards. Li Yundong was shocked. He got up from the ground and rushed over. He hurriedly helped Su Chan up and looked at her carefully. Are you okay? What's going on? Before Su Chan could speak, a cold and arrogant voice came from the room. Fletcher. You're being seduced by an evil woman and you don't even know it. Get out of my way. Don't block my way or I'll deal with you too. Li Yundong turned his head and saw that the room was empty. There was only a 3-foot-long red caltrop floating in the air, emitting a faint cyan light. Li Yundong's eyes widened and he couldn't come to his senses for a moment. Who was talking just now? Su Chan frowned in pain and moaned in a low voice, Yundong, run. The cold and arrogant voice laughed. Wanna run? Evil, where do you want to go? There is no place for you in my Jingyi school no matter how big the world is. Hand over the Renyuan Jindan now, or I will destroy your body and soul. Li Yundong's mind was a little confused. What? Renyuan Jindan? He turned his head to look at Su Chan and pointed to himself. That's mean. Before Li Yundong could finish his words, Su Chan nodded tacitly. As soon as she moved, the qi in her body was scattered everywhere, and she groaned in pain again. Li Yundong's heart ached. He had always loved this girl. She was like a treasure in the world. He was afraid that she would fall in his hands, and he was afraid that she would melt in his mouth. He couldn't even bear to hurt her little finger. He couldn't even bear to hit himself, so how could he bear to be hurt like this? Li Yundong's heart was bursting with anger. He turned his head and pointed angrily at the red caltrop floating in the air. This is my home. Get out of here. The voice sneered again and again. Humph, another fool who has been seduced by an evil. Get out of here or I won't be polite to you. Li Yundong also sneered and said, I think you are the most evil here. I will count to 3. Get out of here or I won't be polite to you. At this time Ruan Hongling, who was controlling her own magical item at home, sneered. Her red lips opened and closed, and her voice naturally passed through the magical item to Li Yundong's room. It seemed that the red caltrop was speaking. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A lecherous person like you, do you think that you can do whatever you want just because you have cultivated a little Tao? After that, Ruan Hongling pinched her fingers and pointed them in the air. With a swoosh, the red caltrop floating in the air suddenly shot toward Li Yundong like a sharp arrow. Li Yundong didn't know how powerful this magical item was. He raised his eyebrows and grabbed it fearlessly with his hands. Ruan Hongling was surprised and laughed at the same time. She was surprised that Li Yundong had actually grabbed the magical item with his bare hands, but she laughed at the fact that this lecherous person had overestimated himself and was extremely arrogant. Humph, this 3-foot-long red caltrop can even drill through refined steel and rocks. How dare you use your flesh and blood to grab it? You are really courting death. Ruan Hongling sneered. Not only did she not retreat, but she also drove the 3-foot-long red caltrop to speed up again. The red caltrop suddenly stopped in the air and then slightly shrank back. The sharp tip of the 3-foot-long red caltrop was so sharp that it gave people a metallic luster, giving people a feeling that it was extremely sharp, as if it could even pierce through a steel plate in front of it. The 3-foot-long red caltrop suddenly accelerated like lightning. The surrounding air shook violently, and the sharp tip of the red caltrop pierced into Li Yundong's palm. Li Yundong only felt a pain in his palm. He roared, grabbed one end of the red caltrop with his injured hand, and grabbed the body of the 3-foot-long red caltrop with his other hand. The huge and vigorous Jindan's primordial qi in Li Yundong's body suddenly felt the authentic superior immortal qi from this magical item invading his body. This Jindan's primordial qi felt that its master was in an extremely terrible danger, so it suddenly burst out. All the qi surged toward the injured place like crazy, automatically protecting its master. Humph, you're courting death. Ruan Hongling sneered and controlled her 3-foot-long red caltrop. She was about to drive the magical item to stab Li Yundong to death when she suddenly felt the magical item shake violently, as if it had encountered some great resistance. Before she could react, Ruan Hongling felt the magical item begin to tremble violently and struggle crazily, as if it had encountered something extremely terrible. After a while, in the blink of an eye, the connection between the magical item and herself was cut off. The magical item was psychic as if it had a life of its own. Once it encountered something terrible, it would tremble in fear. The connection between it and its master was maintained by the mind. If a cultivator's cultivation was profound, even if they were thousands of miles apart, they would not be able to block the connection between them. This was the so-called Sword Immortal's flying sword that could kill people from thousands of miles away. If one wanted to snatch this kind of magical item and cut off the connection between it and its master, it would be impossible to do it without great shintong. What? My magical item has been taken away? How is that possible? Ruan Hongling was so shocked that she couldn't control herself. Her yin spirit quickly came out of her body and floated into Li Yundong's room, wanting to see what was going on. As soon as she entered the room, she saw Li Yundong holding the extremely sharp 3-foot-long red ling in one hand. The red ling was lying listlessly in Li Yundong's hand like a dead snake. At this time, the lecherous man she had looked down on was bursting with dazzling golden light. His whole body was like a golden arhat, majestic. A strong and pure Yuanyang qi was rushing toward her. Ruan Hongling was shocked and her mind buzzed. She stammered, This is Jindan's Yuanqi. You are the successor of Jindan. Li Yundong saw Ruan Hongling at a glance and immediately said angrily, It's you who bullied my girl. After all, Ruan Hongling was a disciple of a famous sect. After a short period of shock, she immediately recovered and said sternly, Since you are the successor of Jindan, why are you still with the evildoer? You should quickly abandon the dark side and seek the light, lest the bright pearls fall into the dark side. Li Yundong said angrily, What nonsense are you talking about? Who I am with has nothing to do with you. Hurry up and come over here. Let me beat you up to vent my anger. Ruan Hongling couldn't believe her ears. She said loudly, Do you know who I am? I am an inner disciple of the Linggong sect of the Jingyi school of the Shanqing sect. How dare you touch me? Li Yundong spat fiercely on the ground and scolded, Bah, what bullshit Jingyi school of the Shanqing sect. Even if you are the queen mother of the heavens or a fairy from the ninth heaven, if anyone dares to bully my girl, I will beat him up. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 124. Go to watch net. After Li Yundong finished cursing, he stamped his feet and rushed toward Ruan Hongling like a cannonball. Watch net. 7K, O-/Ruan Hongling was horrified. Before Li Yundong got close to her, she felt that her yin body was like white snow meeting the scorching sun, almost melting. Ruan Hongling screamed in horror, and in the blink of an eye, her soul flew back into her body. As soon as Ruan Hongling came back to her senses, she stood up with an ashen face. Her heart was thumping wildly, and she felt a chill run down her spine. Women were born with a body of yin qi, and Ruan Hongling had not cultivated to the realm where yang spirit could travel, so she could only use yin spirit. Yin spirit was the ultimate yin qi in a person's body, so naturally, it was most afraid of yang qi. As for Li Yundong, not only was he a virgin, but he also had a powerful Jindan Yuan qi in his body. As soon as this powerful Yuan Yang qi approached, if Ruan Hongling ran a little slower, her soul would be evaporated by the powerful Yuan Yang qi emanating from Li Yundong's body. She would become a walking corpse. Ruan Hongling's magical item had been taken away by Li Yundong empty-handed. Her yin spirit couldn't even get close to Li Yundong's body, so she naturally didn't dare to stay any longer. She looked angrily in the direction of Li Yundong's room, stamped her feet, and instantly turned into a blue light, disappearing from her room. After Li Yundong drove Ruan Hongling away, he looked around the room vigilantly for a while until Su Chan said to him, "It's okay. She's gone." Li Yundong turned around and walked quickly to Su Chan's side. He asked with concern, "How is it? Where are you hurt?" Su Chan had the body of a fox demon, and what flowed in her body was demon qi. Demon qi and immortal qi were natural enemies, just like water and fire, incompatible. She had been hit by Ruan Hongling's magical item before, and the immortal qi had invaded her body. Naturally, she felt pain in her chest as if it was being twisted by a knife. However, this immortal qi was definitely a guest. Fighting in Su Chan's body, it was weak and slowly forced out of her body by Su Chan. "I'm fine," Su Chan said with a smile. "I'm fine." Li Yundong looked at Su Chan's body up and down. He didn't find any bleeding spots, so he breathed a sigh of relief. He held Su Chan tightly in his arms and said with lingering fear, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come back so late. Who was that just now? Why are you looking for trouble with us?" Su Chan's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at Li Yundong timidly, afraid that Ruan Hongling's previous scolding of her would make him afraid. She said weakly, "Half a year ago Wan Jinyuan, the leader of the Gizao sect, refined a Renyuan Jindan. After the news spread, the Gizao sect was besieged by many sects and individual immortals. Watch net. Later I got this Renyuan Jindan and then you happened to swallow it. But those trackers don't know about it and have been searching for my whereabouts." Li Yundong understood a little. He remembered that Su Chan seemed to have mentioned these things to him at the beginning, but at that time he had been entangled in the question of whether there were immortals in this world and hadn't taken it to heart. Li Yundong asked again, "Who was that person just now? She looks a little familiar." Su Chan said, "It's the woman who knocked on the door last time. She said that she was Ruan Hongling, the 45th generation disciple of Jinren Wang of the Shanqing sect of Mount Longhu." Li Yundong exclaimed. Then he slapped his forehead in realization. "I remember. It's her. She seems to live nearby." Li Yundong couldn't help but spit. Damn it, how could it be so coincidental? There just happens to be an enemy living nearby? Su Chan sighed. "It's all my fault. I only wanted to find a good cultivation place, but I didn't expect that if I liked it, other cultivators would naturally like it too." Li Yundong snorted coldly, and there was a murderous look in his eyes. "Do you want to find trouble with her later?" Su Chan was shocked and quickly grabbed Li Yundong's arm. "No, Jingyi school is powerful. Don't provoke them. You will get into trouble." Li Yundong sneered and said, "The barefoot is not afraid of the shoes. What's there to be afraid of?" He suddenly thought of something and looked at Su Chan in confusion. "Have you been hiding in the room all this time?" Su Chan nodded. "Yes, I've been watching you foolishly walking around the room." Li Yundong was so angry that he laughed. He reached out and pinched the girl's cheek. "Why didn't you say anything when you looked at me like that?" Su Chan said aggrievedly, "I was afraid of being discovered by that enemy." Li Yundong said with a smile, "Then why did you talk later? Weren't you afraid of being discovered at that time?" "Because I was afraid that you'd be worried about me. I was so sad when I saw that you couldn't find me. So I couldn't help it, Li Yundong looked at Su Chan anxiously. Li Yundong's heart shook, and his eyes became softer and softer as he looked at Su Chan. He hugged the little girl tightly in his arms and said lovingly, "Silly girl, don't do such stupid things in the future." Startled, Li Yundong hurriedly let go of her hand. "What's wrong?" he asked. "What's wrong? Where does it hurt? Where did you go?" Su Chan blushed and said, "My chest hurts." Li Yundong smiled wickedly and said, Well, I'll give you a massage and you won't feel any pain. Watch net. Su Chan giggled. Bad guy. You still don't forget to bully me at a time like this. Li Yundong's face turned serious and he said, nonsense. My massage technique is authentic. It's a unique skill passed down from my ancestors. After using it once, I guarantee you'll be satisfied. Su Chan covered her chest and stood up with a giggle. As soon as she stood up, she suddenly frowned and squatted down, holding her ankle with a painful look on her face. Li Yundong's heart tightened and he quickly squatted down as well. What's wrong? Su Chan looked at Li Yundong pitifully and said, I twisted my ankle. Li Yundong scolded, that damn woman. How dare she make my girl twist her ankle? Next time I see her, I'll break her leg. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong and suddenly laughed. She said with a face full of admiration, Sir, you were so amazing just now. You actually snatched Ruan Hongling's magical item with your bare hands. Li Yundong said proudly, Of course, don't you know who I am? How can I be your master if I'm not amazing? As he said this, he reached out his hand to pinch the tender flesh on the girl's cheek. Su Chan smiled and slapped Li Yundong's hand away. You're so annoying. Let's get out of here and find another place to live. If she calls for help later, we won't be able to defeat them. Li Yundong had defeated his opponent effortlessly in the first battle. For a moment he was a little proud. He said with a smile, Let them come. If they come, I'll kill them. If they come, I'll kill them. However, Su Chan shook her head with a serious face and said, No, Ruan Hongling was just careless. Her spiritual energy is still above mine. You haven't even completed the Zhuji phase. You're no match for them. Hurry up and leave immediately. Li Yundong had rarely seen Su Chan so serious. He thought for a moment and said, Well, I'll pack up and leave. At the same time, while Li Yundong and Su Chan were discussing changing places, Ruan Hongling turned into a blue light and flew back to Mount Longhu in an instant. At the foot of the lush mountain, a blue light flashed, and Ruan Hongling's slim and graceful figure appeared on the stone steps paved with bluestone. Ruan Hongling's personal magical item had been with her for 10 years, and it was as precious as her life. But now, it had been taken away by Li Yundong with a raise of his hand. The more she thought about it along the way, the more unwilling and sad she became. She had never been so humiliated and wronged. At this time Ruan Hongling returned to her sect and couldn't help but cover her mouth and cry. Her tears fell on the bluestone. She sobbed all the way up the mountain, cursing Li Yundong and Su Chan in her heart. When she arrived in front of a small Taoist temple halfway up the mountain, she was about to raise her hand to knock on the wooden door when she heard a creak. The door opened to the left and right, and a beautiful young Taoist nun in a Taoist robe came out. This Taoist nun was about 18 or 19 years old. Her expression was cold and her figure was slim and exquisite. Her beauty was as beautiful as a flower. The moment she walked out of the Taoist gate, the bright moon in the sky seemed to be ashamed. It pulled the clouds over to cover its face, not daring to show its face in front of such a beautiful woman. As soon as Ruan Hongling saw the Taoist nun, she burst into tears and threw herself into her arms. Sister Ziyuan, my magical item was taken away. Ziyuan didn't seem to be surprised at all. A faint smile appeared on her cold face. She gently patted Ruan Hongling's back with her palm and said, Don't cry, don't cry. Isn't it just a piece of red silk? I'll pick another one for you later. Ruan Hongling cried like a pear blossom in the rain. That's different. My Hongling has been with me for 10 years, and it was personally picked for me by my master. Ziyuan smiled but didn't say anything. She just gently stroked Ruan Hongling's back and didn't say a word. After a while Ruan Hongling was tired from crying. She sniffled and raised her head. With tears in her eyes she said, Sister Ziyuan, how did you know I was coming back? Ziyuan smiled and said softly, Before I left, I did a divination. You must have a tribulation and the time is today. So, I guess you should be back by now. Ruan Hongling smiled through her tears. Sister Ziyuan, you're always so clever. You're amazing. Ziyuan smiled and wiped the tears from Ruan Hongling's cheeks with her hand. Look at you. How old are you? Why are you still crying like this? Tell me, who was it that stole your magic tool? Don't they know that you're from the Jingyi school? Although Ziyuan's words had been very gentle, in the end she revealed her inner pride and loftiness. In her opinion, although Ruan Hongling was impulsive, she was an inner disciple of a famous righteous sect. Her cultivation foundation had been extremely solid since she was a child, and she had a powerful magical item in her hand. Even a cultivator with more powerful spiritual energy than her might not be able to defeat her, let alone take away Ruan Hongling's magical item. If they wanted to take away Ruan Hongling's magical item, only those great cultivators could do it. And these cultivators should be even more clear about the power and status of Jingyi School in the cultivation world. They would never dare to offend Jingyi School easily. When Ruan Hongling heard Ziyuan's words, she suddenly thought of Li Yundong. She gritted her teeth and said, "He's a despicable, greedy and lecherous man." Ziyuan frowned slightly. Oh? Ruan Hongling suddenly remembered the pure and huge Jindan's qi on Li Yundong's body. She grabbed Ziyuan's hand and said nervously, "By the way, Sister Ziyuan, I almost forgot. I saw the successor of Jindan." Ziyuan's body trembled violently, and her cold and indifferent eyes suddenly became bright. She stared at Ruan Hongling and said, "The Ringyuan Jindan has been taken by someone?" Oh. Ruan Hongling said hatefully, "It's that pervert." What? How could this be? Ziyuan was tongue-tied and stunned. She opened her mouth as if she couldn't believe her ears. After a long while, she said to Ruan Hongling, "Go to my bedroom and get the purple gold luo jade plate and the Tongtian glass mirror. We'll go down the mountain in a while." Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 125. Go to see Net. At Su Chan's urging, Li Yundong packed up some clothes, grabbed the last bit of money he had, and followed Su Chan out of the house. Go to see Net. 7KOM. Kaihong ** when _shue% super #speed. Li Yundong and Su Chan wandered around the city at night for a while before they found a hotel to stay in. Li Yundong had no choice but to rent a room with a single bed because he was already very poor. After they entered the room, Li Yundong helped Su Chan, who was limping, to sit down. "Does your foot still hurt?" Su Chan looked around. She had suddenly left the home she was used to and came to this strange place. She was not used to it. "It still hurts a little," Su Chan said. "But it should be fine by tomorrow." Seeing that the little girl was a little depressed, Li Yundong smiled, pinched the little girl's chin and said, "It's okay. Don't worry, I'm here. I saw a pharmacy downstairs. I'll go buy you some safflower oil later and apply it." After that, he put down his luggage and was about to leave. Su Chan tugged at his sleeve and stared at him anxiously. "You have to come back soon, okay?" she said. Li Yundong smiled and rubbed Su Chan's head. "Don't worry. I'll be back soon. I won't leave you behind again." Su Chan nodded and watched Li Yundong go out the door. Li Yundong went downstairs to buy a bottle of safflower oil. It only took him a few minutes, but Su Chan felt as if she had been waiting for centuries. When Li Yundong came back, she let out a sigh of relief and smiled sweetly. What? Logically speaking, it was a very frustrating thing to be forced to live in one's own home by one's enemy. But when Li Yundong saw the innocent smile on Su Chan's face, he felt a warmth in his heart. Although there was a heavy burden on his shoulders, it was like there was endless strength in his bones. It was like as long as Su Chan was by his side, he would never have to worry or be afraid of anything. Li Yundong took the bottle of safflower oil and sat down next to Su Chan. Then he smiled and sighed. "Looks like the two of us are back in Jianghu. We'll have to depend on each other from now on." Before, whenever she couldn't see Li Yundong, her heart would feel empty, flustered, and confused. Now that he was sitting next to her, her heart seemed to have calmed down. The air in the hotel seemed to be filled with his scent. Her body softened and she leaned against Li Yundong, her head resting on his shoulder, feeling the strong masculinity in his body. Watch Net. 7KOM. Net. Super_speed. More. Nu Su Chan closed her eyes and didn't say a word, as if she was greedily enjoying the peace and quiet. Li Yundong caressed the girl's cheek affectionately. Suddenly she smelled a faint smell of blood. She opened her eyes and grabbed Li Yundong's hand to take a closer look. There was a circular scar on his palm. Su Chan's heart skipped a beat and she said in surprise, "I know why you were able to take Ruan Hongling's magical item with your bare hands." Li Yundong hadn't expected that the girl would suddenly say such a thing after being quiet for a while. He smiled and said, "What have you figured out?" Su Chan said excitedly, "Ruan Hongling's cultivation is not strong enough. When she was in the divinization stage, she could only transform the essence, qi and blood in her body into the supreme yin qi, but she couldn't regenerate yang qi from the supreme yin qi. Therefore, she and her magical item are extremely afraid of pure yang qi. Since you have the Jindan's vital energy and are a virgin, the qi in your body is the strongest yang qi in the world. Therefore, when your virgin blood touched Ruan Hongling's magical artifact, It immediately broke through her Dao technique and spiritual seal, and snatched Ruan Hongling's magical artifact. Li Yundong was confused. He thought for a moment, then took out the red caltrop satin that had been stuffed into a ball in his pocket. Li Yundong held the silk in his hand and looked at it carefully. He said, "Isn't this ordinary silk? It's not a big deal." Su Chan looked at the silk enviously and said, "Don't underestimate this silk. This is a magical item made from the colorful clouds that the leader of the Jingyi school of the Shangqing sect picked from the Heaven Lake. It can't be burned, torn, contaminated, or corroded by evil poisons. It can be turned into a sharp weapon that can destroy everything in the world, and it can be turned into a protective wall that is impregnable." Su Chan swallowed and said, "This is a powerful magical item that all cultivators in the world yearn to have. It can be considered a top-notch magical item in the Jingyi school. I didn't expect that you would take it with your bare hands. What an anomaly. I'm afraid no one would believe it if I told them." Li Yundong noticed that Su Chan was staring at the piece of silk in his hand. He smiled and handed it to her. "You like it that much?" he said. "You like it that much? I'll give it to you." Su Chan was shocked. Give it to me? How can this be? This is a magical item that you stole." Li Yundong laughed and said, "What's mine is yours, isn't it?" Su Chan's face was full of shock. She stared at Li Yundong blankly and was speechless for a moment. Go to see. In the cultivation world, the same powerful magical item would often arouse the coveting of other cultivators, which would lead to a fight. This was because magical items were equivalent to weapons for cultivators. How could they fight with others without weapons? If a cultivator had a good magical item, he would definitely cherish it as a treasure and regard it as his life. He would never give it to others even if it was a father, son, or brother. However, Li Yundong had said that he would give it to her. Su Chan couldn't help but feel shocked. At this time, she knew that the boy in front of her loved her unreservedly. He was so good to her, didn't hide anything from her, and gave her all the good things, but she still hid his true identity. The more Su Chan thought about it, the sadder she became. She pouted and tears fell down. Li Yundong quickly put down the silk in his hand and helped her wipe her tears. "Oh, why are you crying all of a sudden? Be careful not to cry like a little cat. I don't want you anymore." Su Chan burrowed into Li Yundong's arms and held his waist tightly with both hands. "No, you can't leave me. I'm relying on you." Li Yundong could feel the girl's obsession and attachment to him. He laughed and said, Okay, just rely on me. Come on, get up. I'll apply medicine for you." Su Chan smiled through her tears and rubbed her head against Li Yundong's body, drying her tears on his clothes. Then she raised her head and said with a smile, "Actually, you don't need to apply it. It'll be fine after one night." Li Yundong looked at the wet patch on his body and scolded her with a smile. "Hey, do you think I'm a rag? Hurry up and stretch out your foot." Su Chan took off her shoes and socks and stretched out her foot, her cheeks blushing. She bit her lip gently with her snow-white teeth, and her 5 toes were slightly clenched. She seemed a little nervous. Li Yundong saw that the little girl's beautiful feet were smooth, and her 5 toes were arranged neatly and beautifully. Although there was no nail polish on her toes, they were brighter and smoother than those with nail polish. They were as gentle as jade. Li Yundong reached out and gently picked up the girl's foot. As soon as his hand touched Su Chan's skin, she unconsciously shrank back, but stopped halfway. Her dark eyes were like a pair of limpid eyes, and the smile on her face was both shy and charming. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. He reached out and pulled the little girl's feet in front of him. He laughed and said, "It's really strange. Why do our men's feet stink, but the feet of beautiful girls like you are fragrant? Is there a difference in the structure of the human body?" Su Chan's body trembled slightly as Li Yundong held her ankle in the palm of his hand. She felt as if an electric current had passed through her body. She felt numb at the same time. She giggled. "That's why I said you guys are stinky men." Halfway through her sentence, she suddenly realized that something was wrong and immediately said, "What do you mean by beautiful girls like you have feet that smell good? Have you ever seen anyone with feet that smell good? Hurry up and tell me." Li Yundong laughed and picked up the girl's foot, then kissed her smooth instep. "I've seen you before," he said. "Why are you jealous?" Su Chan giggled and unconsciously moved her foot back. "Itchy?" Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at her. "Don't move." Su Chan said, "Oh." Then she put her foot back into Li Yundong's hands. Li Yundong held the girl's ankle with one hand and poured some safflower oil on it with the other. Then he gently rubbed the area where the girl had sprained her ankle. Su-chan watched as Li Yundong massaged her ankle attentively. She felt a wave of heat rising from her ankle, making her whole body feel warm. It was as if there was hot honey flowing in her heart, warm and sweet. After a while, Li Yundong looked up and suddenly saw Su-chan looking at him tenderly. Her eyes were full of affection, and it was obvious that she was extremely aroused. He smiled and said, "Why are you looking at me?" Su-chan smiled sweetly. "You're so good to me, sir." Li Yundong laughed. "Silly words again?" Su-chan suddenly thought of something. She asked tentatively, "Sir, aren't you curious that Wan Hongling called me a witch and a demon today?" Li Yundong asked curiously, "What's there to be curious about? I've seen a lot of people like her who consider themselves decent people and think that everything they do is for the sake of justice. I really don't know where her sense of superiority comes from. I hate it when I see it. People like her, as long as they don't share the same ideals, they are demons and heretics." Hearing this, Su-chan felt a little relieved, but she was still a little unwilling. She asked weakly, "But what if one day I really become a witch?" Li Yundong didn't take it seriously. He laughed and reached out to pinch the girl's nose. "If you want to become a witch, I'll become a demon. We two demons will travel together and dominate the world." Su-chan giggled and dodged Li Yundong's hand. She said angrily, "Your hand smells of safflower oil. It smells terrible." After pushing Li Yundong's hand away, she looked at him worriedly and said, "No, you will definitely be a great cultivator in the future. I will be a burden to you if you take me with you." Li Yundong looked at Su-chan tenderly, leaned his head in front of her, and gently kissed the girl's red lips, which were like strawberry jelly. He said softly, "Don't always say such silly things. You will always be my girl. No matter what happens, it won't change." Su-chan was touched and happy. She looked at him affectionately and took the initiative to kiss him. This time, the heavenly thunder aroused the earth fire, and the two of them immediately tangled with each other's tongues. After a while, Su-chan broke free panting. She wiped her finger across her mouth and pulled out a shiny silk thread. She giggled and said, "You're bullying me again. Didn't you say that you would massage my feet?" Li Yundong smiled and picked up the girl's feet again. As he rubbed them, he told her jokes to make her happy. The two of them giggled. Although they both knew that they had offended the extremely powerful Jingyi school in the cultivation world, they were not worried at all. Instead, they were immersed in their own little world. When they looked at each other, they felt so happy and sweet that they couldn't tell what was going on. Sometimes there was a delay in updating the web page. The page would prompt that there was an update, but there would be a delay in clicking on the chapter table of contents. Therefore, it was recommended that everyone use the bookshelf to check it. It was simple, convenient, and intuitive. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 126. Please remember the domain name of this website. Or search on Baidu Sanlian Literature website. After Li Yundong finished massaging Su-chan, he smiled at her and said, "Do you want to take a shower first, or should I?" "You go first," Su-chan said with a smile. Li Yundong tapped Su-chan's nose, picked up his clothes and walked into the bathroom with a smile. Su-chan stood up and tried to move her injured joints after Li Yundong entered the bathroom. At this time, Li Yundong poked his head out of the bathroom and said with a smirk, "I didn't close the door. Don't peek." Su-chan's eyes turned into crescent moons. "Who's peeking at you? You're so hairy and ugly." Li Yundong laughed and retracted his head. Su-chan leaned against the table in the room where the TV was placed. She tilted her head and looked at the misty bathroom. She couldn't help but think, Master once said that the most bitter thing in the world is love. She also said that the worst people in the world are men. But why do I feel that Li Yundong is the best man in the world, and the sweetest and happiest thing in the world is love? The more Su-chan thought about it, the more infatuated she became. She put her hand back and leaned against the table. She looked at Li Yundong's figure in the bathroom and suddenly felt her body go numb. This strange feeling made her very strange. Why do I feel numb when I see him? Is this the feeling of love? Su-chan was in a daze. After a while, Li Yundong walked out of the bathroom, wiping his hair. Li Yundong was shocked when he saw Su-chan. He pointed at her and said loudly, "Hey, why did you put your hand on the electric switch of the socket?" Su-chan was shocked. She quickly raised her hand and said in a low voice, "I was wondering why I felt numb." Li Yundong laughed and scolded her. "You idiot. How can you not feel numb when you put your hand on the electric switch? Besides, do you want to experience the feeling of numbness? Come find me. Su Chan saw Li Yundong smirk and said, Bah, you big hooligan, I'm not looking for you. The two of them laughed for a while, then Li Yundong picked up the magical item from the bed and said, You really don't want this? Su Chan shook her head and thought to herself, I'm a fox spirit, so I only have demonic chi in me. This thing is an authentic immortal magic item. I need immortal chi to control it. How can I use it? Su Chan said seriously, Keep it. You'll need it in the future. Li Yundong laughed heartily. How can a man like me use such a thing? After that he had an idea. With a smile he wrapped the piece of silk around the little girl's injured ankle and tied it into a bow. Then he smiled proudly and said, Not bad, not bad. Looks good. Su Chan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the Jingyi school knew that you used their magical item like this, they would go crazy. Li Yundong snorted. I'd be mad if they bullied you. Don't talk nonsense, I said it's like this. Oh. Su Chan slowly moved into the bathroom, then poked her head out. Then I'm going to take a shower. Li Yundong waved his hand and said, Go ahead. When he saw steam beginning to rise from the bathroom, he withdrew his gaze and couldn't help but smile bitterly. It wasn't easy for him to find a place, but now he couldn't live there. But this was a small matter. The most important thing was that he had no money. Before paying for 2 days' hotel room, the two of them would have to live on the streets. What the hell was this? Li Yundong couldn't help but scratch his scalp and think, Do I have to steal or rob? What a joke. Li Yundong pinched his fingers and suddenly found that the day when his parents would send the money was very close. It seemed to be in the next 2 days. Thinking of this, Li Yundong couldn't help but be happy. God hasn't given me up. Half of the money should be enough to pay back the bank, and the other half should be enough for half a month, right? As for the second half of the month. I'll think about it in the second half of the month. However, in another month my family will definitely know that I was fired. At that time all my financial income will be cut off. What a tragedy. It wasn't easy to find a job, but because I offended the Jingyi school, I didn't dare to go out. What a tragedy. Li Yundong was happy for a while, but he couldn't help but smile bitterly. After the girl came out of the shower, Li Yundong couldn't help but play with her for a while. It was late at night, and the two of them fell asleep in each other's arms. The next day, Li Yundong wanted to get up and go to work, but the girl refused to let him go. No, the Jingyi school is powerful. If you go out like this, you will definitely be found out. Li Yundong smiled bitterly. Do you want me to be a coward for the rest of my life? Su Chan thought for a moment and said, At least wait for 2 days. Li Yundong thought for a moment, then pounced on Su Chan with a smile. Well, little girl, come and serve me well for 2 days. Su Chan dodged with a startled smile, but Li Yundong hugged her and giggled. Li Yundong didn't expect that while he and the girl were in the hotel, Tiannan University had already fallen into chaos because of him. Ever since the news that a pornographic video had been accidentally played in the auditorium had spread throughout the school, the students of Tiannan University had worshipped Li Yundong to the extreme. He was so strong that he didn't seem like an ordinary person. He was surrounded by beautiful women, and he even went against the teachers at school and played pornographic videos. How could there be such an awesome person in the world? Even the male students who used to dislike Li Yundong couldn't help but give him a thumbs up and say with delight, Awesome, this guy is too awesome. Showing Aoi classmates' video in public wasn't something an ordinary person could do. That night, Li Yundong's fan club swelled again, and most of them were male students. That night, a group of big animals excitedly started a heated discussion in the gossip section about the body art of Japanese celebrities such as Aoi and Ozawa, who was better and who was worse. Except for the bold and unrestrained wolf girl, the rest of the girls consciously bypassed the gossip section and went to the Jianghu section of the campus to start a special section for girls. The original poster, Cheng Cheng, had written a line of bold red words on the post. This is a place where ladies come and go. All animals should go around. Otherwise they will be killed. The font was so big that 5 words could form a line, and 3 lines could fill up a 19-inch LCD screen. The male students who clicked on the post saw the line of murderous words and avoided the post, but there were also some who shamelessly went up to it. As a result, they were immediately discovered by the girls. After a storm of insults, they covered their heads and fled from the post. The boys were enthusiastically commenting on the merits and demerits of Japanese stars and exchanging their feelings with each other. Some of them even wrote long reviews. The female students, on the other hand, were much more harmonious. Most of them expressed their appreciation for Li Yundong's manliness in standing up and taking the initiative to take responsibility. They also expressed serious concerns about how the school would deal with Li Yundong. Cheng Cheng took the opportunity to call on the female students to put pressure on the school board to deal with the matter lightly. This suggestion was approved by many girls, but when the leaders of the school board found out about the post, the school forum was ordered to be shut down the next day. All of a sudden, all the students in the school realized that this was a serious matter. Without the school forum, the private discussion among the students became even more intense. Many people expressed their indignation at the school's hegemony, but they did not dare to speak up. On the third day, the principal of Tiannan University, Feng Yubin, returned. The school board officially held a meeting to discuss how to deal with Li Yundong. At this time, Zhou Qin, who had received the news, was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. She wanted to beg her father to let him step in. With his power, he could solve any problem with a phone call. But as soon as Zhou Qin called her father, Zhou Keqiang said as if he had foreseen the future, "If you want me to plead for Li Yundong, then you have to promise me one thing first." Without saying a word or even saying goodbye, Zhou Qin directly pressed the hang-up button. Then she angrily threw the phone to the ground and broke it into pieces. In the dormitory, Feng Na was also burning with anxiety. She seemed to have lost a lot of weight in the past 2 days. She was not in the mood to go to class anymore. She was holed up in the dormitory all day long. She would often pull Ching Ching aside from time to time and ask, "Ching Ching, am I being too selfish? Why didn't I say anything when Li Yundong took the initiative to take responsibility for everything?" "Nana, don't think too much about it," Ching Ching said patiently. "You can't blame yourself for this and neither can Li Yundong. It was Director Qian who made it clear that he was looking for trouble with Li Yundong. There was nothing we could do to help." Feng Na sat on the bed, hugging her knees. She was silent for a long time. Suddenly, she got off the bed and began to change her clothes. Ching Ching, who was surfing the internet, turned her head to look at Feng Na. "You're finally going out?" Feng Na's expression was solemn and serious. She ignored Ching Ching and continued to tidy up her clothes. Ching Ching noticed that something was wrong with Feng Na. "Hey, what are you going to do?" she asked in surprise. "Why, you're not going to tell the teacher that it was you who did this and that it had nothing to do with Li Yundong, are you?" Feng Na's lips were still tightly pursed and she did not say a word. Ching Ching walked up to Feng Na and grabbed her arm. "Are you really going to go?" she said. "Are you crazy? The school committee is in a meeting right now. Who are you going to talk to?" Feng Na bit her lip. "The principal is back today," she said. "I believe that he will deal with this impartially." "Don't you know the principal?" Ching Ching said loudly. "You're jackals of the same lair. You're ruining your own future." Feng Na lowered her head, a pained expression on her face. After a long silence, she raised her head and said slowly but firmly, "Ching Ching, there are some things that you will regret for the rest of your life if you don't do them. Even if you achieve great things in the future, you will still regret it for the rest of your life." Ching Ching was stunned. She watched as Feng Na combed her hair, straightened her clothes and put on her shoes. Just as Feng Na was about to step out of the door, Ching Ching suddenly grabbed her. "Wait," she said. "I'll go with you." Feng Na was shocked. "You?" Ching Ching smiled. "What? You're the only one who can play the hero and I'm not allowed to be in the limelight?" Feng Na was touched by Ching Ching's gesture, but she still said, "Sisters are the best when it comes to important times." Ching Ching pursed her lips into a smile. "Don't be so smug," she said. "I only went there because of Li Yundong. If he knew that you stood up for him, he might be touched and take you into his room. Wouldn't I die of jealousy then?" Feng Na burst into laughter. Then she reached out to pinch Ching Ching's breasts. "You big-breasted, brainless woman. All you know is to be jealous. Go to hell." The two of them joked around for a while until they arrived at the door of the conference room on the 3rd floor of the main building. Feng Na and Ching Ching exchanged glances. Just as they were about to enter the conference room, the door was flung open with a loud bang. Director Qian rushed out of the room, his face flushed with anger. Like a gust of wind, Director Qian brushed past Feng Na and Ching Ching, causing them to stumble over each other. The two girls stared blankly at Director Qian as he passed them. "Is the meeting over?" Feng Na asked. "Don't tell me the results are out already?" Ching Ching asked in horror. The two girls couldn't help but turn to look at the conference room. They saw a group of teachers surrounding a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes, their faces full of flattery. One of the teachers, an old man with a head full of silver hair, was shaking hands with the middle-aged man. Director Sun, you really do care about our subordinate units, the old man said in a booming voice. You're so busy every day, but you still came all the way here to deal with such a small matter. Don't worry, we'll definitely nurture a good student like Li Yundong. We won't let you down. Feng Na and Qing Qing didn't know how to respond to Li Yundong's words, but when they heard Li Yundong's name, their ears perked up at the same time. Then they looked at each other in surprise. Li Yundong's matter has been settled? Who was the one who settled this matter? Was it Zhou Qin? To quickly find this site, please Baidu. Sanlian Literature website. Chapter 127. Go to WatchNet. Feng Na and Qing Qing were in a daze for a while. Qing Qing pulled Feng Na into the corner of the stairs of the teaching building to hide from the teachers who were walking down in groups. Go to WatchNet. 7KOM. Rainbow caret asterisk when underscore _% super hashtag speed. Update. Qing Qing whispered, Nana, no matter what, the matter with Li Yundong is finally over. I believe there will be news today or tomorrow. Why don't we inform Li Yundong first and let him know the good news first? Feng Na was delighted at first. Okay. But soon her face fell. His cell phone hasn't been turned on for hundreds of years. How am I supposed to inform him? Qing Qing thought for a moment and said, Tell Zhou Qin. She should have a way. By the way, did Zhou Qin settle the matter? Zhou Qin was driving to school at this time. Suddenly, she saw her new cell phone vibrate in the SIM card holder of the car. She plugged her earplugs and pressed the answer button. Hello? Feng Na said, Zhou Qin? This is Feng Na. Zhou Qin answered, Yes, what's the matter? Feng Na suppressed her joy and said loudly, Zhou Qin, did you help Li Yundong settle the matter in the small auditorium? Zhou Qin's car jerked violently on the road. Zhou Qin stopped the car on the side of the road with a squeak. She was stunned for a moment. Me? Oh. Wait, what did you say? You said Li Yundong's matter has been settled? Feng Na glanced at Qing Qing in shock and whispered, It's not her. Qing Qing was in a daze. If it's not Zhou Qin, then who? At the same time, a black car with a red flag was parked at the gate of Tiannan University. Although the model was not as beautiful as the luxury cars abroad, the hard black lines made it look solemn and grand. Ziyuan, who was sitting in the car, was wearing a white dress that was no different from that of ordinary people. She held a mobile phone in her hand and was talking to someone. A clear voice of a middle-aged man came from the phone. Immortal Master Ziyuan, I have done what you asked me to do. Ziyuan's voice was as cold as ever. She said lightly, Well, I see. I will write it down for you when I get back. The middle-aged man's voice suddenly became somewhat agitated. Thank you so much, Without waiting for him to finish, Ziyuan hung up the phone without saying a word. Ruan Hongling, who was sitting in the driver's seat next to her, looked at her Shiji with admiration. Sister Ziyuan, why are you so smart? Do you know how to use this method to lure me out? Why didn't I think of using my sex power in the secular world to investigate that guy's background? Ziyuan glanced at Ruan Hongling and smiled slightly. Hongling, we cultivators can't always rely on our own strength and the background of our sect to run amok in the mortal world. We have to use our brains when doing things. Don't be impatient and irritable. Watch net. Ruan Hongling had a stubborn personality. She wouldn't listen to anyone but her senior sister. She nodded and said, Then when that guy comes, we'll take action? Ziyuan shook her head. There's no hurry. Let's observe first. Ruan Hongling said angrily, What's there to observe? Such a lecherous person who helps the wicked and goes with demons should be eradicated immediately. Ziyuan's gaze suddenly became very stern. She stared at Ruan Hongling and said sternly, If you say such hostile words again, you will go back to the sect and not be allowed to leave the mountain for a year. Ruan Hongling had rarely seen Ziyuan so angry. She was immediately frightened and nodded blankly, not daring to say a word. But when she came to her senses, she felt very wronged and sad. Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought, Sister Ziyuan has never been so fierce to me before. How could she be so fierce to me for the successor of Jin Dan? Is that psalm really that important to her? The two of them sat silently in the car. Although the sun was very hot outside and the air conditioner was not turned on in the car, there was not a drop of sweat on their bodies. On the contrary, there was a faint white mist surrounding their bodies, which made them look ethereal and mysterious. Li Yundong stayed in the temporary hotel until the third day. For the umpteenth time he went downstairs to the bank to check his bank card. Suddenly he found good news and bad news. The good news was that his parents had finally sent the money. But the bad news was that because his bank card was overdrawn, the money would be used as the bank's repayment amount. He couldn't withdraw a penny. Li Yundong held his head and squatted next to the tea machine in pain. He wanted to cry but had no tears. What can I do? My parents won't be able to send money next month, and I still have to pay the bank. If I don't pay it back, I'll be in big trouble. Food, clothing, housing, and transportation with the little girl are all money. What a tragedy. A dignified successor of Jindan, a strong man who could take the magical item of an inner disciple of the Jingyi school with his bare hands, actually had no money to live. A penny stumped a hero. The ancients were not deceiving me. Mother, what should I do? Isn't this forcing a good girl to be a prostitute? Damn, what should I do? Do I have to be shameless enough to borrow money? But who can I borrow it from? Li Yundong was so depressed that he walked back with his head down. When he reached the door of the hotel, he heard Su Chan talking in the room. Go to the internet. Li Yundong was shocked. He thought that someone had come in, so he rushed into the door to have a look. He saw Su Chan holding the phone and turning to look at him. The little girl said loudly into the phone, "He's back. You can talk to him yourself." Li Yundong walked up to the little girl and silently mouthed, "Zhou Qin?" The little girl shook her head. Li Yundong picked up the phone doubtfully and said, "Hello?" Feng Na's voice came through the phone. "Oh, hello Mr. Li, my young master Li. I finally found you." Li Yundong said lazily, "What's the matter? Miss Feng? How did you know that you could find me with this phone? Zhou Qin told you?" Feng Na giggled. She was obviously in a good mood. "Who else could it be? I'm not joking with you. Hey, I'm telling you, you have to come to school quickly. There's something very, very important." Li Yundong snorted coldly. "Are you going to publicly announce that I'm being fired?" Feng Na and Ching Ching laughed loudly on the other end of the phone. It sounded like they were enjoying a prank. Li Yundong couldn't help but say angrily, "Hey, you two heartless people. You know that I'm going to be fired. Are you happy?" Feng Na and Ching Ching laughed even harder. Li Yundong took the phone out of his ear and held it like a walkie-talkie. "Hey, did you call to make fun of me? That's enough. I'm going to hang up." Feng Na didn't dare to laugh anymore. She held back her laughter and said loudly, Hey, don't hang up. Don't hang up. It's a good thing." Li Yundong was so angry that his nose was crooked. "Hey, is it a good thing for me to be fired? Are you trying to piss me off?" Feng Na couldn't help but giggle again. No. Who said you were fired? Hurry up and come to school. You're all right now. You've been acquitted." Li Yundong was surprised and overjoyed. He couldn't believe his ears. What did you say?" "Your matter has been settled," Feng Na said loudly. "I heard it with my own ears just now." Li Yundong couldn't help but be ecstatic. This was really a life-saving straw for a drowning man. "Really?" he asked loudly. "You're not lying to me, are you?" Feng Na giggled. "How could I lie to you about something like this? You took the blame for me back then, didn't you?" Li Yundong laughed like a villain who had achieved his goal. "God bless me. My parents' source of income will finally be able to continue for a while." Li Yundong laughed for a while, then coughed dryly and said in a strange tone, "Oh, they were the ones who said they were going to be fired. Now they're the ones who said they weren't going to be fired. This is really putting me in a difficult position." Feng Na and Ching Ching couldn't help but burst into laughter again. Ching Ching came up to Li Yundong and said with a smile, "Li Yundong, don't act like you've been cheated. Hurry up and treat us to dinner." Li Yundong's heart trembled as soon as he heard that. He was now a negative asset and he only had a few red notes in his pocket. How could he afford to treat them? Thinking of this, Li Yundong couldn't help but smile bitterly. Poverty really stunts ambition. The little girl was right. If you haven't heard the Tao, it's difficult to follow the law. If you've heard the Tao, it's difficult to follow the law. Where am I going to get the money? Alas, if it were just me, it would be okay. But what about the little girl? It's really difficult to keep a beautiful woman as a mistress these days. Li Yundong's heart was in a mess. Fortunately, Li Yundong was broad-minded. This kind of thing only lasted for a while before he put it aside. Holding the phone, he pretended to be angry and said, "What? I'm treating you to dinner. If I hadn't stood up for you, you too would still be carrying punishment. Hurry up, come over and take me to your place. Otherwise, I'm telling you, I'm not going back." Ching Ching was flustered and exasperated. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Feng Na push her away and say over the phone, Okay. Where are you now? We'll come over to pick you up." Li Yundong chuckled and told her where he was staying over the phone. Okay, wait for me there, Feng Na said. Li Yundong hung up the phone. He was in a good mood. He stretched and said, Can we go out now, girl? It's been 3 days and there hasn't been any movement. Su Chan was, after all, inexperienced and not vigilant enough. She thought for a moment and said, Okay, let's go out and take a look. It's not good to keep hiding like this. About 15 minutes later, Su Chan's phone rang again. Li Yundong and the little girl went downstairs, only to see Ching Ching poking her head out of the taxi and greeting them. Hey, over here, over here. Feng Na opened the door of the back seat for Li Yundong, then stepped aside. Li Yundong and the little girl got into the back seat. As soon as they sat down, Feng Na smiled and said, Hey, I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? As soon as Li Yundong heard this, he was depressed. He thought to himself, I've already experienced 2 pieces of good news and 1 piece of bad news when I withdrew money before. Li Yundong looked at her warily. You're not going to tell me that the good news is that the university won't expel me, and the bad news is that the Public Security Bureau is going to take me away, are you? Ching Ching and Feng Na burst into laughter at the same time. Ching Ching held her stomach and turned her head to the side, wiping away her tears. Li Yundong, you're so funny, she said. Hey, seriously, Tianan University is so boring without you. Li Yundong was pretty familiar with Ching Ching. Ignoring the fact that she was his senior, he slapped Ching Ching on the head. Hey, don't gloat over my misfortune. Hurry up and tell me what you mean, Ching Ching said. Feng Na laughed. The good news is that not only did the university not expel you, but they also reproved your exam qualifications for other subjects. Hearing this, Li Yundong was pleasantly surprised. Really? Holy sh*t. Who's so awesome. They turned the tide and set things right. Feng Na chuckled. Don't get too excited yet. There's another bad news. Li Yundong became vigilant again. What's the bad news? Feng Na pursed her lips and smiled. The bad news is the final exam starts the day after tomorrow. Holy sh*t. Li Yundong's vision went black and he almost fainted. He rolled his eyes and took a long time to catch his breath. He said angrily, What? What did you say? The final exam is the day after tomorrow. I haven't even reviewed a single subject. Are you kidding me? Ching Ching, who was sitting in the front row, laughed. The other good news is that you have at least 1 day to review. Li Yundong almost went crazy. This is F***king good news? Are you kidding me? Last week, number 8 on the top flowers list. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 128. Go to Watch Network. When Li Yundong returned to campus, he noticed that the students around him were standing not far from him, looking as if they had not seen him for centuries. They were all pointing fingers at him. The boys were smiling meaningfully and the girls were giggling. Damn it, Li Yundong murmured. Looks like the whole school has heard about this. Feng Na covered her mouth and laughed. How could it not have? Your story has already been posted on the campus forum to the 8,000th comment. Li Yundong laughed. What a bunch of idiots. Li Yundong laughed. What a bunch of idiots. Ching Ching covered her mouth and snickered but said nothing. The news of Li Yundong's return to campus quickly spread to the teachers. Each and every one of them stared at Li Yundong strangely, as if they could not understand why he had such a powerful background. The principal, Feng Yubin, immediately organized a school-wide meeting. He held Li Yundong's hand on the rostrum and asked him about his well-being. He also promised Li Yundong that this kind of injustice would never happen again. He also thanked Li Yundong again and again for his contribution to the school shooting case. To Li Yundong's amazement, the principal, on behalf of the school board, had awarded him with an honorary Red Flag of Honor for acting bravely in a just cause. Li Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. The one who presented the Red Flag of Honor was Director Qian. The smiling director handed the red flag to Li Yundong, praising Li Yundong as if it was a matter of course. He said that Li Yundong was the pride of Tianan University and would be recorded in the school's history in the future. Li Yundong, of course, did not believe such hypocritical words. He said a few more polite words, then walked down the rostrum to the applause of the whole school. Feng Na came up to him and winked at him. Hey, are you going to treat me to a meal now? Li Yundong rolled his eyes at her and tossed the red flag into her arms. I'm giving it to you, he said. What's the use of this thing? Is it even enough to pay for a meal? Seriously, why don't you give me a bonus? Sun Li, the class monitor who was standing next to Li Yundong, laughed. Seriously? You only care about money? Li Yundong sighed. I almost fell asleep on the road. Yundong, are we out of money? Su Chan asked weakly. Only then did Li Yundong remember that Su Chan was still by his side. He turned around and patted her, pretending to be angry. Don't interrupt when adults are talking. Su Chan pouted and said, oh. Then she stopped talking. Watch net. 7KOM. Rainbow caret asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag speed. Update. Feng Na, on the other hand, looked at Li Yundong thoughtfully and secretly made up her mind. When the meeting was finally over, Li Yundong returned to the classroom. He grabbed Sun Li by the arm and asked, Class rep, can I take a look at your notes on the other exam subjects? Sun Li sneered, Yo, you don't usually burn incense, but you're here to make a last-minute cradle? Li Yundong smiled shyly and said, Class rep, good class rep, you can't just leave me in the lurch. There are hundreds of them, how can I see them all? Please do me a favor and do me a favor. Sun Li giggled and said, How can it be as exaggerated as a few hundred? There are only a dozen of them. Li Yundong yelled in an exaggerated voice, A dozen of them is scary enough. I only have a day to read so many teaching materials, how can I finish reading them all? Sun Li tilted her head and thought for a moment. Fine, she said. Since you brought glory to the class, I'll go look for them for you. You wait here. Li Yundong was overjoyed. Class rep, you're my savior, he said, bowing deeply. I'm counting on you for the rest of my life. Sun Li blushed and said, What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Wait here. I'll be back in a minute. After Sun Li left, Su Chan whispered to Li Yundong, Yundong, why do you have to study? Li Yundong sighed. You really don't know how expensive rice and fuel are until you take charge of the household. If I quit school, my parents will find out next month. Then I'll have no source of income. Su Chan blinked and asked, Haven't you already found a job? Li Yundong sighed again. Do you really think it's that easy? Li Yundong thought. President Chow looks like she wants to have a thing with me. And this woman is so seductive. How am I supposed to go to school? What if I lose control one day? All of my efforts will go down the drain. Su Chan saw that Li Yundong was in trouble, so she didn't ask any more questions. She just sat there quietly and snuggled up to him. Go to reading net. 7KOM. Sun Li returned to the classroom 10 minutes later. She was holding a thick stack of notebooks in her arms. They were at least a foot tall. Li Yundong sucked in a breath of cold air and leaned back unconsciously. His face was full of horror. F***, no way, he said. So many? Isn't this going to take me 8 to 10 years to read? Sun Li slammed the stack of notebooks down in front of Li Yundong. These are just the tables of contents, she said. Li Yundong almost flipped over in his seat. He stared blankly and stammered, Are you exaggerating? Do you think this is Stephen Chow's The Deer in the Cauldron? Sun Li burst into laughter. I was kidding. Here are the contents of the test. Li Yundong stared at the pile of notebooks with a bitter look on his face. There are so many of them. How am I supposed to read them all? Sun Li clapped her hands and said, Well, that's your problem then. I finally helped you out. The rest is none of my business. Li Yundong cupped his hands at Sun Li. All right, thank you. But where did you get all these notebooks from? Don't you need to read them? Sun Li looked at Li Yundong, shook her head and sighed. Do you really think that all the other students are like you? Unparalleled heroes? We've already read all the notebooks we need to read. Suddenly, Sun Li giggled. You have no idea how excited the girls in the girls' dorm were when they heard that you wanted to borrow their notebooks. They even took out their treasured notebooks. TSK. You really are the most charming of them all. I'm impressed. By the way, there are a lot of notebooks here. Make sure you don't ruin them. You'll have to return them to them. Sun Li, the Sichuan hot chili pepper, had a mischievous glint in her eyes. She walked away, humming a little tune as she swayed her braided hair. Li Yundong stared at the huge pile of notebooks with a frown on his face. He felt a headache coming on. Forget it. Worst comes to worst, I'll just stay up all night. Didn't I have a photographic memory? Li Yundong gritted his teeth and swore inwardly. Li Yundong hugged the stack of notebooks with a look of valiance on his face. Girl, you lead the way. He yelled at Su Chan, I'm going to burn the midnight oil tonight. Su Chan giggled. Okay, sir. Then she skipped to the front. The two of them were completely oblivious to the fact that Ziyuan and Ruan Hongling had been watching them the whole time. As soon as Ruan Hongling saw Li Yundong, she was filled with anger and fear. Zi Yuan, on the other hand, was staring at Li Yundong in confusion, as if she couldn't figure out what was going on. After they got in the car and returned to their residence, Zi Yuan said to Ruan Hongling, "Hongling, you're wrong again." "What am I wrong about?" Ruan Hongling asked in confusion. Zi Yuan said lightly, "This man and this demon are both children. Can't you see that?" "What?" Ruan Hongling exclaimed. "How is that possible?" Zi Yuan looked at Ruan Hongling and sighed. "Hongling," she said, "I told you you can't judge people based on your own likes and dislikes. You have to observe them more. Look at the two of them. The girl's eyebrows are tightly furrowed, her pelvis is tightly closed, and her buttocks are tight. Her legs are sealed like iron gates, and it's hard to get a finger through the gap between her thighs. Look at the way she walks. You can tell that she's a virgin. Look at Li Yundong. Why was he able to take your magical item with his bare hands? Now it's clear that this man is also a virgin. The blood of a virgin in his body is the most yang thing in the world. It can break your magical item. Everything has its vanquisher. Therefore it's not surprising that he took it with his bare hands." Only then did Ruan Hongling understand, and the fear in her eyes gradually disappeared. She patted her chest and said, "I was wondering why he was so powerful. Even Master couldn't take my magical item with his bare hands. Damn it, I was scared by him, so I turned around and ran away. If I had known, I would have been able to take them down by myself." Zi Yuan frowned and said unhappily, "Hongling, why are you saying that again? You underestimate the enemy. You don't have a magical item and your cultivation is not good enough. How can you fight with him? Moreover, this man is a virgin. How can you infer that he is a pervert based on your own likes and dislikes? Moreover, learning the immortal method is not for you to show off and fight fiercely. You are really reckless." Ruan Hongling pouted and looked unconvinced. She snorted in her heart, "If learning the immortal method is not used to enforce justice on behalf of heaven, then what's the use of learning it? This successor of Jindan is your future lover, so you naturally have to speak up for him. Humph, you take this saying so seriously." Zi Yuan knew her shimmy very well. Although she couldn't really probe into her mind to understand what she was thinking, she could more or less understand something from her eyes. Zi Yuan didn't refute Ruan Hongling's unspoken thoughts. Her thoughts drifted far away as if she had returned to the scene 10 years ago. She vaguely remembered that she was still a little girl of 8 or 9 years old. That day, Master had taken her to the top of the mountain and looked down at the world and the vast sea of clouds. "Zi Yuan, do you know that you can see your past and present lives here?" Although Master had lived for almost 200 years, he was still so handsome and sage-like. He pointed to the Fengqian stone on the top of the mountain and said with a smile. How had she answered at that time? Yes, it seemed that she had answered like this: "Master, my past life is in the past and can't be reversed. I just want to know what will happen in this life." At that time Master had laughed. He had raised his hand and broken a branch of a pine tree. Using the sea of clouds as an inkstone and the morning glow as a pen and ink, he had written a psalm on the Fengqian stone. After writing the psalm, Master had pointed to it and said to her, "Your fate in this life is in it." At that time she had looked at this huge Fengqian stone and found that it was engraved with cursive characters written in colorful clouds. It was unrestrained and majestic. When Jindan appears, the fate of the world is determined. When the thunder first strikes, the truth is revealed. She had read the first sentence of this psalm and raised her head to ask Master, "What does it mean when Jindan appears? The fate of the world is determined." At that time, Master had stroked her head lovingly and said with emotion, "It means that on the day Jindan appears, your Mr. Right will appear." "Mr. Right? But if I don't know him, why should I recognize him as my Mr. Right? Haha, why do we have to know each other?" Zi Yuan. "But if I hate this person very much, or if I don't have any feelings for this person, what should I do? Why would I fall in love with him?" Zi Yuan, don't ask me why now. You can find out for yourself in the future. And you have to remember, this is fate. Fate doesn't care about why. There's no right or wrong in fate. The point is, this is your fate. Zi Yuan let out a long sigh, her eyes blurred and confused. She whispered in her heart, "Master, I have already seen the successor of Jindan. As I said back then, I don't have any feelings for him. He is no ordinary person. But why does Master say that he is my fate? Why on earth?" Zi Yuan looked ahead in a daze. She unconsciously murmured, "Let's wait and see. Why on earth?" Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 129. Go to see Net. Li Yundong returned to the hotel with a pile of notes. He only opened a few of them for a while, then smiled bitterly. Go to see Net. 7K, the notes were all from his female classmates, and some of the girls knew that he wanted to borrow them, so they boldly wrote confessions in the notebooks. Li Yundong forced himself to skip the content and read on. After reading for a while, he felt his head swell. Even though he had achieved success in qi cultivation and had a photographic memory, how could he read so much? During the Three Kingdoms period, Zhang Song had a photographic memory and forced Cao Cao to burn his copy of Meng De's new book. But how big were the characters in ancient times? How big were the characters now? Zhang Song read a paragraph of Meng De's new book, at most a few thousand words, but this notebook had at least 100,000 words. Li Yundong counted the number of notes. There were a total of 12 books. Nearly 1,000,000 words. How could he read it? Wouldn't it kill him? Li Yundong groaned and fell onto the bed, holding the notebook. Su Chan watched him memorize. Because the room was small, she didn't want to disturb Li Yundong, so she couldn't do anything. The more she sat, the more bored she became. After a while, Su Chan knelt in front of Li Yundong pitifully, pulled his sleeve and said, "Sir, I miss home." Li Yundong was not in the mood to memorize. He sighed and said, "I miss home too." Su Chan thought for a moment and said weakly, "Why don't we go back and have a look?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Aren't you afraid that your enemies will come to find you?" Su Chan shook Li Yundong's arm and said, "Let's go back and have dinner. It should be fine, right? I miss your food." Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "Well, let's go back and have a look. It's been a few days, so it should be fine, right?" The two young boys and girls discussed for a while, then secretly left the hotel, secretly took a taxi, and secretly went to Hongxing New District. Then they sneaked back to the home they had been away from for a few days. Go to see Net. As soon as they entered the house, Li Yundong glanced at the broken glass table on the ground. He sighed. Home is still the best. Su Chan also sighed. Yeah. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Although they had not lived here for a long time, they had already regarded this place as their home. Little Fox searched the house carefully and vigilantly. When she didn't find anything out of the ordinary, she leaped onto her bed and rolled around. Home is still the most comfortable, she said in a silly voice. Li Yundong swept up the scattered glass fragments on the ground and said, "Of course. How can they be compared?" Su Chan rolled around on the bed for a while, hugging the pillow. Seeing that there was no movement in the living room, she quietly got up and looked into the living room. She saw Li Yundong lying on the sofa, memorizing notes. Su Chan was unhappy. She ran up to him and said coquettishly, "Oh, you said you'd come back to cook for me?" Li Yundong pointed at the kitchen. "Isn't there one in the fridge?" "I'm busy. The exam is the day after tomorrow. Do you want me to put up a red light?" Su Chan shook Li Yundong's hand. No. I want to eat the food you made for me. The hot, steaming food. I don't want to eat cold food." Li Yundong put down the notebook in his hand and looked at Su Chan. "Praise me," he said. "I'll go." Su Chan giggled and kissed Li Yundong's cheek. "You're the best, sir. I like you the most." "No," Li Yundong said with a straight face. "That's too cliché. I'm sick of it." Su Chan pouted and thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "You love me the most, sir. You'll go, okay?" "No," Li Yundong said, feigning anger. "You're getting more and more perfunctory. If you want to praise me, just praise me, okay?" Su Chan lowered her head, feeling wronged. But then she suddenly thought of something and threw herself in front of Li Yundong. She smiled like a flower and said, "Sir, your girl is so beautiful. You're so lucky." Li Yundong burst out laughing. He threw away the notebook in his hand, held the little girl in his arms, and kissed her hard. He rubbed the little girl's nose lovingly with his nose. "Well, you're so cunning. That works too. I'll go make you something delicious." Su Chan laughed happily. "You're the best, sir." Li Yundong smiled. "You're so obedient and beautiful. Of course I have to be good to her." Su Chan giggled and pulled Li Yundong up from the sofa. "I'll help you. Go watch the net." Li Yundong was shocked. "Don't. Stay in the living room and watch TV. Don't go into the kitchen, please." Su Chan puffed her cheeks and said, "You're so annoying. Hurry up." Li Yundong put on his apron with a smile. "Okay, I'll show you what it means to be as fast as lightning." 20 minutes later, Li Yundong had made 3 dishes and a soup. Although the dishes were just home-cooked dishes and weren't very sumptuous, Li Yundong and Su Chan ate happily. The warmth of the meal was far more than what they had in the hotel. After dinner, Li Yundong continued to lie on the sofa and study his notes. Su Chan leaned against him and said in a sweet voice, "Yundong, I don't want to go back to the hotel. I still want to stay here." Li Yundong put down the notes in his hand. "Aren't you afraid that your enemies will come to find you?" Su Chan said with a sad face, "I'm afraid. But I don't want to leave. What should I do?" Li Yundong thought for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Didn't you say that there's a rule in the cultivation world that you can't offend ordinary people?" Su Chan nodded. "Yes." Li Yundong tapped his nose. "Then I haven't reached the Zhuji phase yet. Am I a cultivator?" Su Chan thought for a moment. "Probably not." Li Yundong clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Isn't that right? Since I'm not a cultivator, then they shouldn't come to me. We'll close the doors and windows tightly. They won't force their way in, will they?" Su Chan blinked. She felt that there was something wrong with Li Yundong's idea, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. After all, she was inexperienced. How could she know that Li Yundong's idea was not only naive but also stupid? Su Chan thought for a moment and reluctantly agreed to Li Yundong's idea. The two of them snuggled up in the living room. Su Chan leaned against the sofa and sat on the carpet, her head pillowed on Li Yundong's belly. Li Yundong was still holding his notebook and reading like crazy, burning the midnight oil. The day of the final exam came, and Li Yundong finally finished reading all the notes. He hadn't closed his eyes for more than a day. His brain was severely overdrawn, and there were dark circles under his eyes, which made Su Chan's heart ache. When they arrived at school and sat down in the classroom, Zhou Qin, who happened to be next to Li Yundong, was startled. She stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes and thought to herself, did the two of them go too far? Did they end up like this? Thinking of this, Zhou Qin couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in her heart. Li Yundong felt a little creeped out by Zhou Qin's gaze. He unconsciously reached out and touched his face. "Is there something wrong with my face?" Zhou Qin's expression was strange. "There's nothing wrong with your face, but why do you look like a dying person? Your eyes are dark. Didn't you look in the mirror?" Li Yundong held his head in pain. "Don't mention it. There are so many notes. My head is about to explode." As he said this, Li Yundong made a hand gesture. "There are so many notes. I'll finish reading them in 2 nights. Do you think I won't have dark circles under my eyes?" Only then did Zhou Qin understand, and the pain in her heart eased a little. She opened her mouth and was about to speak, but suddenly, an invigilator walked in with a stack of exam papers under his arm and said in a dignified voice, "Students, please be quiet. The exam will begin next." With a walled sound, all the students in the classroom put away their things one after another and sat up straight. Li Yundong and Zhou Qin also stopped talking. Li Yundong took out the exam pen and subconsciously glanced out of the window. Su Chan, who was waiting for Li Yundong outside the window, smiled and waved at him. Li Yundong also smiled at her, then took a deep breath and waited for the exam to begin as if he was facing a formidable enemy. After the exam papers were handed out, the invigilator sat on the podium and picked up a newspaper to read. Li Yundong was very puzzled by his attitude. Why is the invigilator so lax this time? Not only is there only one teacher, but he's also reading the newspaper. In the past, these teachers were like ghosts. They were ruthless when it came to arresting people. But when Li Yundong withdrew his gaze, he suddenly saw a student in the front row flipping through a small piece of paper under the table while doing questions. Li Yundong smacked his forehead and secretly regretted it. "I'm so stupid. Why didn't I think of making a cheat sheet? If this isn't cheating, I'll be damned if I can pass." But soon he saw another student not far away, flipping through a book under the table while doing questions. Li Yundong was stunned. Isn't this person a little too bold? Isn't she afraid of getting arrested for such a big book? The consequences of being arrested are very serious. Just as Li Yundong was in a state of shock, he suddenly heard the clear and loud sound of a book being flipped. Li Yundong turned his head and suddenly his eyes widened. He saw Zhou Qin place a book on his desk, flipping through it while doing questions. It was as if she didn't care about the invigilator at all. Li Yundong's eyes widened and he thought to himself, is this too much? Is the exam for the descendants of high-ranking officials also this awesome? Li Yundong stared at Zhou Qin for a while. Seeing that she had no intention of avoiding the invigilator at all, he couldn't help but sneak a look at Zhou Qin's desk with his pen and whisper, "Hey, aren't you being too arrogant? You actually put the book on the desk to copy." Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong with a stunned and puzzled expression. She said, Today is an open book exam. Isn't it normal for me to flip through a book? What? An open book exam? Li Yundong almost spat out 3 liters of blood. He said in exasperation, No, no one told me. Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong's expression and tried to hold back her laughter. Not only today but tomorrow and the day after tomorrow will also be open book exams. Do you know why? It's because I'm taking care of you. You're really too important. F***CK. I didn't sleep for a day and 2 nights. You call this taking care of me? Li Yundong burst into tears. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 130. Please remember the domain name of this website. Or search on Baidu. Sanlian Literature website. Even though Li Yundong had finished all the questions, he was still full of resentment. As soon as he walked out of the classroom, he saw Sun Li chatting happily with other students in the hallway. Sun Li? Li Yundong yelled as soon as he saw Sun Li. Sun Li screamed the moment she saw Li Yundong. Then she turned and ran. Li Yundong was so angry that he ran after her. Hey, stop right there. Sun Li pushed her way through the crowd, laughing as she ran. Stop right there. You're messing with me, aren't you? Li Yundong said angrily. You didn't tell me it was an open book exam. You made me memorize all those notes. Sun Li laughed. You're the one who doesn't show up all day. You don't even know what's going on at school. What does it have to do with me? Besides, you didn't ask. Li Yundong laughed angrily. Then it's still my problem. He chased after her. The students in the hallway had no idea what was going on, so they parted to make way for him. Just as Li Yundong was about to catch up to her, Sun Li raised her head and saw Feng Na and Qing Qing walking towards them from a short distance away. Sun Li quickly hid behind Feng Na and yelled, Senior, help. Someone's trying to murder us. Feng Na was shocked. She looked up and saw Li Yundong running over angrily. She asked in surprise, What are you two doing? Li Yundong realized that he couldn't just pin Sun Li down and beat her up. He took the opportunity to get off the stage and said to Feng Na, Ask her. Sun Li whispered into Feng Na's ear. Feng Na burst into laughter. Qing Qing covered her mouth and snickered. Li Yundong glared at Sun Li. How dare you laugh? You're gloating, aren't you? Feng Na clutched her stomach and laughed. Li Yundong, you're so cute. Cute? Li Yundong's face crumbled. He knew he wasn't going to get away with this. Fine. I'm scared of you guys. I'll get out of here, okay? Hey, I need to talk to you about something. Feng Na called out to him, trying hard not to laugh. By then, Su Chan had also caught up with them. She stared at Li Yundong, Sun Li, and the others in confusion. Is there something you need from me? Li Yundong snorted, looking very unhappy. Let's talk while we walk. Looking around, Feng Na felt that the environment wasn't suitable, so she smiled. Nothing important. I just wanted to have a meal with you. Li Yundong smiled and said, You want to have dinner with me? Okay, I was wondering where I could get my lunch. However, I'll be thick-skinned and say something ugly. Hee, I don't have the money to treat you to a meal. Feng Na pursed her lips into a smile and said, You don't have to. When they left the school building, they bumped into Zhou Qin at the bottom of the stairs. Zhou Qin was standing at the bottom of the stairs with her long hair draped over her shoulders. She was holding her textbook in her arms. She looked like a stalk of wintersweet that stood proudly in the snow. She was so beautiful that no one dared approach her. As soon as Zhou Qin saw Li Yundong, a smile broke out on her frosty face. She looked at Feng Na, then nodded at Su Chan with a smile. What are you guys going to do in such a mighty manner? Li Yundong laughed. He pointed at Feng Na and said, The rich lady is treating us today. I'm going to rip her off. Zhou Qin looked at Feng Na in confusion. She more or less understood what this senior of hers was thinking. What happened? Why are you treating us? Any girl would feel more or less pressured when facing Zhou Qin. This kind of pressure didn't just exist in terms of beauty, temperament, and figure. Zhou Qin's powerful family background would also have a certain impact on these girls. Feng Na didn't want to lose her cool in front of Zhou Qin. Her tone was a little provocative and angry. Do you really have to have something to do to treat us? Zhou Qin raised her eyebrows and was about to say something. Li Yundong saw that the two of them were going to go tit for tat, so he smiled and tried to smooth things over. Oh, this kind of thing is like Zhou Yu fighting Huanggai. One is willing to fight and the other is willing to suffer. What else is there to say? Come on, let's go eat. Feng Na and Zhou Qin no longer had the intention to target each other. A trace of sadness flashed in their eyes. Yes, one is willing to fight and the other is willing to be beaten. It was they who volunteered to join the fight. Who is to blame? Feng Na thought. Su Chan rubbed her stomach and shouted in a sweet voice, "What are you guys doing here? My stomach is almost shriveled. Yundong, it's all your fault. You didn't come out earlier." Li Yundong smiled and pinched the girl's cheek. "I haven't finished the questions. How could I come out, you little brat?" The two of them laughed and joked around, making Feng Na and Zhou Qin feel much better. Zhou Qin opened her red lips and was about to speak when she saw Ding Nan suddenly walk over. Ding Nan's eyes were fixed on Zhou Qin. After staring at her for a long time, she smiled at Li Yundong and said, "Li Yundong, long time no see. You're getting more and more famous now." Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "Don't make fun of me. I'd rather not have this kind of name." Ding Nan looked at Feng Na and the others and smiled. "Are you guys going to eat?" Su Chan, who was completely unaware of the subtle relationship between the girls, shouted, Yeah, I'm starving. Why are you guys still standing here like idiots?" Ding Nan smiled. "Then let me pay for today's meal." "Okay." Feng Na's face showed a hint of displeasure. Ding Nan was an extremely observant girl. She immediately smiled at Feng Na. "Senior Feng Na," she said, "this meal is my way of thanking Li Yundong for saving my life, okay? It's been so many days and I still haven't thanked him properly." At this point, Feng Na couldn't insist. She smiled. "Thank you for spending so much money," she said. "So many of us have benefited from it." When Ding Nan suddenly stopped being sarcastic, she was indeed a very young and beautiful girl. She was tall and slim with a sexy and slender figure. Her curves were curvy in all the right places. Even in her school uniform, she looked like a fashion model on the runway. Ding Nan smiled. "Don't mention it. It's my honor. Well, let's go eat near the school first. We have exams in the afternoon. I'll treat you guys another day." Ching Ching, who had been silent all this time, pulled Feng Na aside and whispered, "Hey, why do I feel like there's something wrong with Ding Nan?" "Me too," Feng Na said in a low voice. "Especially her and Zhou Qin. It's so weird." The group of people walked toward the restaurant next to the school. Zhou Qin and Ding Nan seemed to have a tacit understanding and fell behind at the same time. Zhou Qin didn't even look at Ding Nan. She hugged the textbook in front of her chest tightly, as if she was afraid that someone would steal it. "Ding Nan, what do you want? I've given you everything you deserve." Ding Nan didn't look at Zhou Qin either. The two used to be a pair, but now they seemed to have broken up. She stared at Li Yundong, who was not far away, and said flatly, "Nothing. I'm just here to join in the fun." Zhou Qin's cold face showed strong anger and disgust. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome here." Ding Nan chuckled coldly. "Zhou Qin, don't get me wrong," she said, pointing at Li Yundong, who was laughing and joking with Su Chan. "You're just following him. What right do you have to criticize me?" Ding Nan said, pointing at Li Yundong, who was laughing and joking with Su Chan. Zhou Qin sneered. "You think you can steal Li Yundong?" Before Ding Nan could say anything, the roar of a sports car suddenly came from the school gate. A black BMW X5 stopped not far away from Li Yundong, nearly crashing into him. The BMW rolled down its window and a girl peeked out. She was a pretty girl with smoky makeup, which made her look very coquettish. The girl shouted at Li Yundong's back. "F***CK. Don't you have eyes? Don't you know how to give way?" Li Yundong turned his head and gave the girl a sidelong glance. "Idiot. Do you have eyes on the back of your head?" he retorted rudely. Flustered and exasperated, the girl turned around and yelled at the boy in the driver's seat, "Young Master Lu, look at him. He's insulting me." Sitting in the driver's seat was a handsome young man. It was none other than Lu Chuan, the son of Lu Dekai. Lu Chuan's hands were shaking, and the corners of his eyes were twitching. Why did I have to run into this guy again? But the truth was, they were both students of the same school. It was normal for them to not bump into each other for a day, but it was only a matter of time before they ran into each other again. Seeing that Lu Chuan was silent, the girl couldn't help but look at him with disdain. "Young Master Lu, you're not afraid of this guy, are you?" Lu Chuan's nerves were instantly pricked. He shouted hysterically, "You think I'm afraid of him? Who the hell does he think he is?" The girl shouted, "That's right. Let's go teach him a lesson. Damn it. How dare he act so arrogantly here?" While they were talking, Li Yundong poked his head into the car and looked inside. He sneered. "Oh, it's young Master Lu. What's the matter? You got a new car again?" Li Yundong despised Lu Chuan very much. He had been slapped to the ground in public by young Master He, but he didn't even let out a fart. It really made Li Yundong speechless. Even though Lu Chuan hated Li Yundong to the core, he was still afraid of him. The scene at the school gate was still vivid in his mind. Even now, when he closed his eyes, he could still remember it vividly. Lu Chuan's legs trembled uncontrollably. He forced himself to calm down and put on a fierce look. What are you doing?" The girl next to him didn't notice Lu Chuan's fierce look. She got out of the car and pointed at Li Yundong. "What the hell are you doing? Hurry up and apologize." Li Yundong sat on the hood of Lu Fei's car and looked at her with a sneer. "Apologize? What did I do to you?" The girl sneered. "You're in our way. Get out of the way. A good dog doesn't stand in the way, you know?" Before Li Yundong had time to get angry, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, Feng Na, Ching Ching and Ding Nan, the 5 girls, were all unhappy. They all glared at her. Su Chan shouted angrily, "You're the dog. How dare you scold me like this?" The girl was about to yell at them, but she turned her head and was immediately shocked. She saw that each of the girls was more beautiful than the other, and each of them had different temperaments. Any one of them was a rare beauty. The girl's imposing manner suddenly faltered, but at this time, there were already a lot of people around watching the fun. She was not willing to lose face like this, so she pointed at Li Yundong and sneered, "Stand up. Do you know how much this car cost? Can you afford it if you break it?" Li Yundong laughed and patted the car door next to Lu Chuan. "Isn't it just a small BMW? I've seen a stretch Mercedes-Benz, haven't I, young Master Lu?" Lu Chuan's face turned purple and he was speechless. The girl sneered. "Bullsh*T. Bullsh*T. He stood up, clapped his hands and smiled at Su Chan. "Forget it," he said. "Let's go have dinner. Let's not argue with them." Su Chan nodded. "Forget it. Let's go have dinner. We won't argue with them." The girl saw him turn around and walk away, surrounded by 4 beautiful girls. She felt an indescribable feeling in her heart. "You don't even have a car," she said with a sneer. "What are you trying to show off for?" Li Yundong frowned and turned around to look at the girl. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. The girl was so scared that she took a step back, but she still straightened her neck and said loudly, "Isn't that the case?" As soon as the words left her mouth, the roar of an engine came from not far away. It was the engine of an authentic sports car. A fiery red Lamborghini convertible pulled up to the school gate. The outline of this small sports car was strong and powerful, rough and unrestrained, but in the car sat a beautiful woman wearing sunglasses. This beautiful woman had long brown wavy hair, and she wore a black strapless gown that contrasted sharply with the red car, revealing a deep cleavage on her chest, making her look hot and sexy. Li Yundong felt a headache coming on as soon as he saw the car and the sexy woman in it. "Isn't that President Chow? What is she doing here?" To quickly find this site, please Baidu. Sanlian Literature website. Chapter 131. Go to watch net. Lu Chuan and the girls' eyes widened when they saw the car. The girls' eyes were filled with envy and greed. Lu Chuan stammered, Who is this woman?" The girl said sourly, "It must be a mistress." As she spoke, she forgot that she was also a mistress. "Go to watch net? Go to watch net." Chow Kefi got out of the car and asked the boy next to her. She didn't take off her sunglasses, but the wide sunglasses accentuated her sexy, plump red lips. "Hello, is Li Yundong studying in this school?" As a pure and innocent student in an ivory tower, the boy had never seen such a sexy woman before. His eyes widened and he couldn't speak for a long time. Chow Kefi frowned. Another girl asked the question. This girl was tempted by Chow Kefi's beauty, so she took a step back and pointed at Li Yundong. Chow Kefi turned her head and saw Li Yundong standing about 30 meters away from her. She was overjoyed. She got into the car and drove towards Li Yundong. But Lu Chuan's car was parked on the road, blocking her way. Chow Kefi had no choice but to stick her head out and yell, "Hey, the car in front, please give way." Lu Chuan's heart thumped wildly when he saw the girl driving in his direction. He subconsciously adjusted his posture, then started the car and drove forward a little. He parked the car and was about to get out to get close to the girl when Chow Kefi got out of the car. She looked like a wife who hadn't seen her husband for a long time. "Why did you skip work on the second day of work?" she said coquettishly. "It took me so long to find you." As soon as Chow Kefi finished her sentence, everyone around her immediately turned to look at Li Yundong in a strange light. Lu Chuan and the girl beside him were even more dumbfounded than Li Yundong. Li Yundong coughed awkwardly. "This is President Chow," he said. "I told you about her. You could say that she's my boss, right?" Li Yundong added in his mind, "Even though she's not your direct boss." Li Yundong had disappeared without a trace for several days. Yin Mingfan was very mad. She had never seen anyone absent from work on the second day. Chow Kefi was even crazier than her. Chow Kefi had originally thought that she would be able to tease the little boy further the next day, but after waiting for a whole day, he still hadn't come to work. She couldn't help but feel flustered and began to let her imagination run wild. Did I act too impatient at the last meal and scare him? Chow Kefi thought. Or did he say something wrong or do something wrong? Chow Kefi, who had endured for a few more days, finally couldn't sit still anymore. She asked Yin Mingfan for Li Yundong's detailed information, and then drove to Li Yundong's university. When Chow Kefi found Li Yundong, she was so ecstatic that she even ignored the other people around Li Yundong. When everyone looked at her, she came to her senses. The smile on her face was much more reserved. She nodded to several female friends around Li Yundong and said, "Are you all Li Yundong's friends?" As she spoke, Chow Kefi's eyes suddenly fell on Zhou Qin. She was shocked and asked tentatively, "Zhou Qin?" Zhou Qin nodded politely to her. "Yes, you are Chow Kefi, President Chow, right?" Chow Kefi laughed and reached out to shake hands with Zhou Qin. "We met in a hurry at the last banquet. It's hard for you to remember me. Go to the internet." Literature. Zhou Qin smiled faintly and said, "President Chow, as a celebrity in the film and television circle in Tianan City, you are so beautiful. Of course I have a deep impression of you. Why did you come to see Li Yundong today?" Chow Kefi smiled and said, "My company has been busy recently, so I shamelessly asked President Yin to borrow Li Yundong for a few days. Zhou Qin, you won't blame me, will you?" Zhou Qin was very reluctant to see Li Yundong deal with a socialite like Chow Kefi. She was secretly unhappy, but it was not appropriate for her to show it here. She smiled politely and said, "You are too polite, President Chow." Su Chan's big eyes looked at Zhou Qin and then at Chow Kefi. She moved closer to Li Yundong's ear and whispered, "Yundong, I'm hungry. Can we talk while we eat?" Li Yundong smiled and pinched her nose. His doting feelings were not hidden from others at all. Chow Kefi had been paying attention to Li Yundong's every move. She saw that although there were many beautiful women around Li Yundong, he was extremely intimate with Su Chan. He kept a certain distance from the others. She was shocked in her heart and thought, this must be Li Yundong's girlfriend. She is really beautiful. I have traveled all over the country over the years, but I have never seen such a pure and coquettish girl. No wonder Li Yundong loves her so much. Although Chow Kefi was jealous in her heart, Su Chan was so innocent and lovely that she couldn't feel jealous at all. She smiled apologetically at Su Chan and said, "You must be Li Yundong's girlfriend." Although Su Chan saw that Chow Kefi and Li Yundong looked intimate, she felt that there was a faint familiar aura on Chow Kefi's body, which made her not feel disgusted. Instead, she subconsciously felt a sense of closeness. She smiled brightly and said generously, "Yes, hello." Chow Kefi shook hands with Su Chan and praised, "What an outstanding beauty. If she were to make a movie, she would definitely be a hit." Li Yundong was secretly amused and thought to himself, Su Chan is a cultivator. Isn't it funny to ask her to make a movie? Moreover, this circle is so dark. I don't want my girl to get involved in this mess. Li Yundong said to Chow Kefi, "President Chow, what can I do for you today?" Chow Kefi just couldn't resist the desire in her heart, so she came to look for Li Yundong. What did she want? But if she couldn't answer now, she was afraid that she would be laughed at by these girls. Yundong go. A good man has ambitions. You don't have to worry about me. Li Yundong held the little girl tightly in his arms, loving her and saying, "Why are you so obedient? I love you so much. Girl, aren't you afraid that I'll run away with those rich women?" Su Chan giggled. Her face was both innocent and sly like a fox. She smiled and said, "You're such a good girl. Are you willing to let me go?" "That's right. Of course not." Li Yundong loved Su Chan to the extreme. He was intimate with the little girl as if there was no one else around. He said, "But if I'm not here, what if you meet an enemy?" The little girl thought for a moment and carefully took out 2 paper talismans from her pocket. She kept one for herself and handed the other to Li Yundong. She whispered in a voice that only Li Yundong could hear, "These are the 2 Thunder God talismans that my master left me to save my life. You keep one and I keep the other. If you are in danger, use them. When I see the thunder strike, I will come to you. If you see a storm and thunder, come to me as soon as possible. Isn't that all right? Li Yundong took the talisman and looked at it. He saw that the talisman was dim yellow, like a page of an old calendar. It was thin and brittle. If he used a little force, the talisman would shatter. Li Yundong opened the talisman and saw that there were some strange symbols drawn on it. In the middle of the talisman, there were 4 murderous ancient seal characters. Heavenly thunder punishes evil. As soon as these 4 words jumped into Li Yundong's sight, he felt a creepy sense of power and pressure hit him in the face, making all the hair on his body stand on end with a whoosh. Li Yundong was shocked. His hand trembled and the talisman almost fell to the ground. Su Chan quickly pressed the talisman into Li Yundong's palm and said in a low voice, "This is the divine thunder talisman of the 5 thunder spell. As long as you transfer the Yuanyang Qi in your body into this talisman, you can attract heavenly thunder, but..." Su Chan tightened her grip on Li Yundong's hand, and her expression was surprisingly nervous and serious. "You can't use this divine thunder talisman to deal with secular mortals, let alone use it easily, because the power of heaven is unpredictable. Be careful not to attract thunder to kill the enemy, and instead attract heavenly thunder to yourself, causing an unexpected disaster." Li Yundong was infected by Su Chan's expression, and he couldn't help but look solemn. He carefully put away the talisman and said, "I know, you have to be more careful. By the way, it's not safe at home. Don't go back alone. You might as well find a place outside and wait for me." Li Yundong thought for a moment and smiled. "Why don't you go to the amusement park we went to last time and wait for me there?" As he said this, Li Yundong took out all the bills he had on him and stuffed them into the girl's pocket. After Su Chan finished explaining the important things, she looked at Li Yundong eagerly and said, "Then I'll wait for you there." Li Yundong smiled and said, "You can play as much as you want inside, but remember not to run around. Take your phone with you. Otherwise, I won't be able to find you." Su Chan shook her head. "I don't want to play anything without you to accompany me." Li Yundong stroked the girl's head lovingly and said, "Then I'll take you to play next time." Su Chan immediately beamed and stretched out her little finger. "That's what you said. Don't go back on your word and don't cry out in the middle of the game like last time." Li Yundong chuckled and made a pinky promise with the little girl, then gave Su Chan a reluctant look. Only then did he walk over to Zhou Qin, Ding Nan and the others, saying apologetically, "I'm sorry, I can't have lunch." When the girls saw that Li Yundong had even left his real girlfriend behind, they knew that he must have something important to do. They all smiled reasonably and said, "Go and do your thing." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Then I'll treat you next time. I'm sorry this time." After saying goodbye to Zhou Qin, Feng Na and the others, Li Yundong said to Chao Kefi, "President Chao, you've been waiting for a long time. Let's go now." Chao Kefi smiled and said, "Why do you make it sound like we're going to part forever?" After that, she got into the flashy Lamborghini. Li Yundong followed her into the passenger seat, and the two of them left quickly amid the roar of the engine. Only the boys at the school gate were left whispering to each other. "Who was that just now? I don't know her. She's so beautiful. She must be some rich woman. Hey, Li Yundong isn't a sugar daddy, is he? No way. He's not that kind of person, is he? Do you really think there are people who won't bend over for money these days? Come on, no matter how handsome he is, do you think his face can be used to swipe a credit card? Sigh, why can't I be that rich woman who drives a sports car?" The inexperienced students were all talking about Li Yundong and Chao Kefi. It seemed that love was nothing in the face of worldly power. Lu Chuan stared at Li Yundong and Chao Kefi's backs as they walked away. His heart was bleeding with hatred. He just couldn't understand it. I'm better looking than Li Yundong and I'm richer than him. Why do so many beautiful women keep trying to get close to me? Humph, the girl beside Lu Chuan said with a bitter look on her face. I thought you were so awesome, but in the end you're just a sugar daddy. Lu Chuan turned his head and roared, "Get in the car. Cut the crap." The girl was startled. She grumbled as she got into the car. But when she got into the car, the BMW X5, which she had thought was incomparably vain, now felt like a broken ox cart. Ding Nan stood next to Zhou Qin. The two sisters, who were usually inseparable, looked like they were in perfect harmony. Ding Nan sneered as she watched the Lamborghini disappear into the distance. Did you see that, Zhou Qin? An unmarried, outstanding man is like a treasure without an owner. Any ambitious woman would want to take him for herself. This is war. Zhou Qin's gloomy eyes darkened even further. She gave Ding Nan a sidelong glance. What are you trying to say? Dingnan smiled. You know what I'm trying to say. After that, she turned around and left without saying goodbye to Feng Na, Ching Ching and the others. She didn't even mention lunch. Li Yundong's departure left Feng Na and the others dispirited. Su Chan, on the other hand, stared blankly in the direction Li Yundong had left. She suddenly felt an emptiness in her heart. C/OM/. Chapter 132. Go to Watch Network. Chao Kefi and Li Yundong drove to the city center. Li Yundong saw that she didn't drive to the Dongxing building, so he asked, "Aren't we going to your company?" Chao Kefi smiled and said, "The company? That won't do." This time Zhang Guojing and Tan Fei came to Tianan City in secret. "I'm only responsible for reception and security work. If I bring them to the company, those gossips will spread all over the world in less than 2 days. Go to the Kanban network." Chanzhong look. Li Yundong was surprised and said, "Zhang Guojing and Tan Fei? What are they doing in Tianan City?" Chao Kefi looked at Li Yundong and said with a smile, "They are the male and female leads of a TV series I'm planning to shoot recently. They came here to have some fun." Li Yundong smiled and said, "What do you want me to do?" Chao Kefi sighed and said, "You saw it last time. The people who asked me for debts were very fierce. If anything goes wrong, I don't want to work in this industry anymore. These two are big shots and I can't afford to offend them. If there is any grievance, you have to take care of it for me, right?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "I took money from others to eliminate disasters. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Chao Kefi looked at Li Yundong from time to time as she drove. She hadn't seen him for a few days and she liked this little boy who was several years younger than her. She was so moved that she reached out to touch Li Yundong's cheek, ignoring that she was driving. Li Yundong was startled and pointed to the road ahead. "Look at the car." Chao Kefi was startled by Li Yundong's voice. She quickly turned her head and turned the steering wheel. The front of the Lamborghini shook a little and then returned to normal. Chao Kefi's cheeks were red, and her heart was beating wildly. She couldn't help blushing. She felt as if she had returned to her first love. "Why can't I help it when I think of him?" Chao Kefi stole a glance at Li Yundong, only to see that the boy seemed to be frightened by her actions just now. He sat a little farther away from her. She sighed in her heart. "I wasn't like this before," she thought to herself. Really, could it be that he was my nemesis in my previous life?" Chao Kefi was absent-minded all the way. Li Yundong had a lot of questions to ask Chao Kefi, but he didn't dare to. He was afraid that if she was absent-minded, he would die a useless death. Watch net. 7 km. Fortunately, they arrived at their destination without any mishaps. When he got out of the car, he saw that it was the Xingyuan International Hotel, where Zhou Qin had held her birthday party last time. The waiter's eyes lit up at the sight of the flashy and luxurious Lamborghini. He stepped forward and couldn't help but look Li Yundong up and down, secretly wondering who this young man was. Chao Kefi led him into the hall, then took him to the coffee shop. She found a relatively hidden seat against the wall and sat down. Chao Kefi smiled and said, "Sit for a while. I'll be right back." Li Yundong nodded and turned his head to look around. Chao Kefi walked to the women's restroom and called her secretary, "Hello, little Zhang?" "Yes, it's me." "When will Zhang Guojing and Tan Fei arrive?" "Will they be here soon?" "What about Delu, who is in charge of security?" No, don't look for him. Tell him that things have changed and he doesn't need to come." "Well, I changed someone else at the last minute." "What? Don't you know how to tell him?" "Do you want me to tell him?" "Do you want me to find someone who knows how to tell him?" Chao Kefi hung up the phone and scolded in a low voice, "Why are the girls nowadays so immature? How dare you ask me to tell him? Isn't this a joke? Why did I ask you to be my secretary?" Li Yundong waited in his seat for about 10 minutes, but Chao Kefi didn't come. He was really bored, so he took out the thunder talisman in his pocket and opened it to take a closer look. The paper of this talisman was very strange. It looked like it could be torn with a little force, but in fact, when Li Yundong tried to tear it with his hands, he found that the paper was harder than he had imagined. He tried to tear it with a little force, but it couldn't be torn at all. When he used a little more force, the thunder talisman suddenly shook Li Yundong's hand away. A burst of blue light appeared, and then it slowly fell on the table. Watch net. Rainbow caret asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag speed. Update. Li Yundong was so scared that his little heart was beating wildly. He looked around nervously, but fortunately there were not many people in the cafe at this time. No one noticed his abnormality and Li Yundong felt relieved. This talisman can attract the 9 heavens thunder? Although Li Yundong had already seen the little girl's invisibility technique and he had seized Yuan Hongling's magical item, he still felt that things like immortal magic were very distant and magical, especially to attract thunder from the sky. This made him feel especially excited and mysterious. Since there are really cultivators and immortals in this world, will there be demons and ghosts? Li Yunyang suddenly thought of something. But why does no one else in the world know anything about it? Was it hidden well? Or was there some other reason? Li Yundong sat in his seat, puzzled. After a while, Chao Kefi came over. Li Yundong quietly put away the thunder talisman. Chao Kefi smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry they're late. You know, big stars love to be late." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Anyway, I have nothing to do." After waiting for more than 2 hours, Li Yundong and Chao Kefi had drunk more than a dozen cups of coffee, and the 2 big stars finally arrived. Alas, they're finally here. Chao Kefi sighed, full of resentment, but her face was full of smiles. She stood up and greeted them with a smile. Li Yundong also stood up and looked at the 2 big stars who had made them wait for nearly an afternoon. A man and a woman walked toward them. The man was about 30 years old, about 1.8 meters tall, and had a square face. Although he was dressed casually, his clothes were all famous brands. He wore a pair of big sunglasses on his face so his face could not be seen clearly. The other woman was dressed fashionably. She was wearing a Polynesian-style grass-colored dress and a pair of white ribboned high heels. She had a slim figure and was very eye-catching. Just like the man beside her, she also wore big sunglasses on her face. Li Yundong couldn't help laughing and said, "Is it a professional habit for people in your industry to wear sunglasses?" Chao Kefi looked straight ahead and said with a smile, "Yes, there are a lot of problems in this industry, especially for stars like them. There are often a lot of paparazzi following them when they go out. It's very troublesome." While they were talking, Zhang Guojing and Tan Fei had already walked up to them. Chao Kefi greeted them with a smile. "Just the 2 of you? Where's your agent?" Zhang Guojing took off his sunglasses, revealing a handsome face full of masculinity, but the corners of his eyes were slightly upturned, making him look a little frivolous. He looked at Chao Kefi with a flash of amazement and greed in his eyes. He smiled and shook hands with Chao Kefi. They went to put their luggage in first. "I came to meet our President Chao first." As he said this, he looked at Li Yundong and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. "Is this your brother?" Chao Kefi laughed, pulled Li Yundong over and introduced him. "This is the bodyguard responsible for the safety of your group on this trip. His name is Li Yundong. Although he is young, he is a great master." Li Yundong nodded at him in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Hello." Zhang Guojing smiled disapprovingly and did not shake hands with Li Yundong. The look in his eyes was very disapproving and he sneered in his heart, "You're a new toy boy. Great master? What are you pretending for?" Although Zhang Guojing looked very masculine in terms of heroic spirit, he was far inferior to Li Yundong. Moreover, Li Yundong's strong Yuanyang aura made any man who got close to him feel repulsed. This was the same sex repels each other. However, the opposite sex did not all attract each other. Tan Shui had not looked at Li Yundong carefully since she came in. She just stared at Chao Kefi with deep disdain and jealousy in her eyes. She said in a strange tone, "Great master? Are there great masters these days? I think they are all silver and wax spears, right? I don't think this little brother is an adult, right?" Chao Kefi was secretly unhappy and looked at Li Yundong worriedly, but Li Yundong's face was as calm as water, and she could not tell whether he was happy or angry. She forced a smile and tried to smooth things over. "You can't judge people by their appearance." "Can't judge people by their appearance?" Tan Shui took off her sunglasses and carefully looked at Li Yundong. Suddenly she was stunned and a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. "Little brother, you look good. President Chao, you're good. The quality of the goods this time is very high." Li Yundong frowned and was angry in his heart, but his face remained calm. Chao Kefi was already a little angry. She said, "Tan Shui, this is a master I specially invited. Don't talk nonsense." Tan Shui sneered and said, "President Chao, please calm down. I was just saying." As she said this, she winked at Li Yundong. "Hey great master, why don't you perform? Let me broaden my horizons, okay?" Tan Shui was a new film and television star in China recently. She appeared on the screen as a pure and innocent girl. Even Li Yundong, who didn't watch soap operas, knew this woman. However, he had never expected that today, this so-called pure and innocent girl would be so unbearable. My girl is still the best, Li Yundong thought to himself. Li Yundong smiled at Tan Shui and said, "Big sister, if you want to see a sideshow, please take Route 381 to the Lion Garden. There is a zoo there and you can see all kinds of sideshows." Tan Shui's face changed. Chow Kefi, who was next to her, held back her laughter and tried to smooth things over. All right. Sit down and talk. Do you want to be chased by fans for autographs?" Tan Shui snorted and glanced at Li Yundong provocatively. She muttered in a low voice, "Pretentious fool." Although she had spoken in a low voice, Li Yundong heard it clearly. He became more and more impatient. If it weren't for Chow Kefi's face, he would have left in a huff. Li Yundong sneered in his heart. These stars are bright and beautiful on the screen. I didn't expect them to be so vulgar. /om/ that you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.